Morena, colleagues, and welcome to International Women's Day. I believe we are the first event that's kicking off International Women's Day in the world, and it seems sort of glamorous and appropriate that we're commencing this event from Palmerston North. And our event today is clustered around something significant of our time for our time. We are summoning a defiant future. And we are activating that defiant future through regional, rural, and remote women. So, can I thank all our friends, many of whom you're seeing, who are joining us today, and all the new friends we're about to meet through the next 3 hours or so. Now, my name is Tara Brabazon. Hello, and I'm your host through the next 3 hours. And I'm also the warm-up act starting in a couple of minutes. But please feel free to enliven your screens. This is an active digital experience. And as you'll see, there are comments and a comment track that's available that I'll be enjoying and engaging with throughout the event as well. So please feel free to leave comments. And there's also, as you can see in the schedule, question times available about once every hour. So you're about to meet the most extraordinary women. But it is appropriate, while acknowledging extraordinary women, to also present an acknowledgement of country. Acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands on which we meet today, elders past, present and emerging, and any Indigenous colleagues with us today. We must also summon the history and the legacy of the women who came together and gifted to us the importance of international women gathering today. We need to remember Rosa Luxemburg, Clara Zetkin, and of course, Alexandra Kollontai. We honour them and we honour all women today. But as I said, I'm your warm-up act for the fabulousness that is to follow. So, colleagues, let's begin. And I commence my presentation today that's, I think, appropriate for International Women's Day, commencing, of course, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, with a Palmerston North story. Now, I'm active on many of the Palmerston North Facebook groups. Although I'm Tawiwi, although I'm Australian, I try and contribute actively to be an active member of this community. Now, I'm a member of Everything Palmy. And although I don't post on the group, I am interested, I go to the events, and I try and support the people on this group. And on Sunday, January 26, 2025, I was scrolling through Everything Palmy, and I'd just been to the local gym, and a woman was requesting information about a local church that would be supportive for her family, but also would have perhaps a female minister or speaker. Now, I'm not religious or a churchgoer myself, but I clicked like to wish the woman well in her journey through faith. And I offered no comment. And then I proceeded to clean the house. It was Sunday. But something odd happened. I got a notification from this group, which is incredibly rare because I don't post to the group. But a gentleman by the name of Nick Olas named me and made a really odd statement. Quote, "I'm not supporting your crappy feminist ideology as seen from your news feed. So don't think my comment is a support of feminazism." End of quote. Now, I don't know this man. I have no connection with this man. We're only sort of linked via this Palmerston North group. And this was his response to a silent woman that he did not know. So on this International Women's Day, as we welcome women from around the world, I start with a short session that explores the education of women. As women continue our education, it enables us to read, to write, to think, to participate fully in citizenship. It allows us to transcend a crappy feminist ideology and to build a different future and to build a defiant future. Exploring the power of regional, rural and remote women, the RRR PhD, is my focus for today. And such an intervention is timely. I'll show you why. Graduate education, colleagues, is changing. In 2017, and for the first time in the United States, women dominated doctoral programs. And in 2021, and for the first time in Aotearoa, New Zealand, women dominated the doctoral program. Therefore, my presentation today to kick off International Women's Day for Graduate Women Manawatu acknowledges the importance of these regional, rural and remote conversations when seen through the lens of a PhD. So I want to talk today about the specific challenges and capacities of completing a PhD in these locations. And what's amazing is there's sort of deathly silence in the literature about how to supervise in these locations. So my presentation today has three parts, and the first part, let's begin. Now, every nation on planet Earth has regional, rural, and remote locations. They are defined relationally and they occupy specific roles and specific functions. The people who live, work, develop families, enjoy leisure, make friends are framed by this environment. But the problem is that unproductive binary oppositions configure the triple R environment. To add complexity to these sort of very simple binary oppositions, the naming and the categorization of the regional, the rural, and the remote is colonizing. It is colonizing language. It's imposing value and importance on particular modes of urbanity. Remote places, of course, are central, and they're specifically central for Indigenous citizens, First Nations and First Peoples and knowledge systems, Mataranga Māori. Colonisation, therefore, continues to shunt these places out of modernity. And the challenge with these locations, and they are real challenges, is that health and education infrastructure is lacking. The small population, therefore, enables the active forgetting of these places, particularly by policymakers and politicians. These regional, rural, and remote locations are imagined into existence by national policy, but that national policy is delivered from large cities. They are reimagined through popular culture as backwaters, as boring, as dangerous, as irrelevant. And these iconographies and historiographies connect and cluster and chatter amongst themselves. These locations allow this piling up of binary oppositions to create an ideology of deficit, of less. But these theories of rurality, regionality, and the remote transform through the lenses of post-colonialism and feminism with specific sensitivity to the political economy. So from this theoretical foundation, an architecture of advocacy is created. Women occupy specific historical and cultural roles in these environments. Women's history is constructed through a pathway of drought, of iterative pandemics, economic injustice, floods, cyclones, as we're seeing in Australia today, and climate emergencies, but also punctuated through housing injustices, health injustices, and trying to work out what educational success looks like today. We also have to acknowledge the women that we have lost through domestic violence. And an extreme example of this urbanity is the Australian one, of course, where the overwhelming majority of the population live in large city centres. It makes Australia one of the most urbanised populations in the world, but Australia also has one of the lowest population densities outside of these major centres. Therefore, the majority of the population can simply forget about the regional, the rural, and the remote. There is a wider international history that is shaping our work today, colleagues, that I think is really appropriate for our International Women's Day this year. And it's the legendary Jason Servone's book, corporatising rural education. This is one of my favourite books of this century, can I say, and wonderfully it began its life as a PhD. He argued that rural and regional towns and cities have been buffeted by waves of neoliberal globalisation. So what this means is market forces, corporations have seen the brittle nature of economies in these areas and then moved in to exploit this situation. So there's a lot of talk about neoliberalism, particularly at the moment. Neoliberalism, at its most basic, affirms the variable of market forces, free markets, and the profit motive above all other variables. If it's configured into a T-shirt slogan, it would be "Let the market rip." It is anti-state intervention and anti-regulation. So you can see the challenges that emerge in education, in health, in public services like libraries without regulation. The global financial crisis in 2008 was the peak moment of this unregulated ideology, although we may be about to see it again. We see unsecured loans, derivative trading, bitcoins. Basically, the international economy is treated like a poker game. This is casino capitalism. And of course, it didn't end well on that occasion either. But this environment has profound and damaging impacts on rural, regional, and remote locations. So you can see why I think through this narrative I'm constructing, why white working class men and women in regional, rural, and remote locations voted for Donald Trump and voted for Brexit. These, quote, angry white men and women, end of quote, using the phrase from Savone, were not validated and were not addressed by any of the political parties. But the point of these locations and how neoliberalism has framed these locations is far more complex and damaging than any quick understanding of Donald Trump could suggest to us. Savone argues that configuring the rural and the regional as backward summons a cascading series of identities like redneck or bogan or gronk, depending on your nation state. And it opens out these environments to market-driven, profit-motivated programs. So the rural, the regional, the remote are constructed through a deficit model. And the citizens that live in these locations are also configured as in deficit, requiring the market economy rather than public services to sort them out. So the labelling, therefore, of rednecks has nothing to do with the lived reality or lived experience of rural, regional and remote people. Instead, it is a product of configuring these locations as in deficit and configuring them as underdeveloped and outside of modernity. Now, such an ideology poses particular challenges for universities, but also regional schools confront incredible instability and a churn of staff. But how do we understand and contextualise this experience for education? That's my second stop. Let's go to the regional university. Now, universities are important economically, socially, and politically, but they matter incredibly for these small cities and large towns. Urban planners, urban theorists configure tiers of cities. So, global cities, most famously studied by the legendary Saskia Saskin, are globalising cities that are categorised by sameness. Finance, capitalism, and corporation and corporate headquarters are located in global cities like New York. People and money move between them. Second tier cities are the non-capital cities in a nation state defined relationally against a global city. So this could be Manchester, Osaka, Christchurch, Perth, and case study methodologies most often research these modes of urbanity. These particular cities gain the advantage of aggregation of services, particularly in health and education. It's a complex workforce and strong immigration histories exist within them. The third tier are the small cities and the large towns. Event management literature from tourism does mention them a bit, but basically they are neglected in the research literature because they're not only invisible, they're also troubled. They are edgelands and they confront unstable employment. They're also incredibly diverse. Now, regional universities are located in third tier cities. The third tier cities are the canary in the mine of late capitalism. They function at the mono-industrial edge, and it's difficult for these locations to gain an identity or an image because of their diversity, and it means that no real clear policy modelling can intervene and enable development. But in their remarkable study, Erikek and McKinley did the deep work to try and model what is happening in these small cities. And you'll notice particularly 5 and 8. They're two of their 8 categories, looked at the role of the university in the small city, with the determinant being, do the students come to the city to go to university and stay? Or once they finish their degree, do they leave? With or without a university, as you can see, problems cluster in third tier cities. Transportation and communication infrastructure is lacking. So because of the lack of a definitive employment base, the population is declining and health and educational facilities are reducing. Abandoned and derelict buildings proliferate, environmental problems, hazards, pollution result from the after effects of deindustrialisation. So with a narrow range of jobs available, the young people move away. So it's difficult to attract new residents, the populations decline, schools close, hospitals close, the tax base reduces. So the smaller the city, the more important the university. And while second tier cities may encase multiple institutions, and global cities like London, New York, Auckland have a matrix of institutions from FE and HE to provide educational opportunities, these small cities feature often only one university or the outlier campus of a metropolitan university. Therefore, in a time like ours, a declining economy, regional injustices heighten, and the role of the university in these small cities increases. So a university cannot solve these problems, but it can provide salve, and it can provide salve for movement and change. Now, there's very little research about small cities, and I'll tell you why. Third tier cities are incredibly diverse, as are the institutions, the educational institutions in them. So, for example, Cambridge University and Federation University in Ballarat are both in third tier cities. They don't probably have much else in common, but perhaps they do, because universities are great employers of diverse staff groups. Yes, the focus is on academics, but an array of retail and customer services, sport and leisure workers, caretakers, chefs, gardeners, librarians, marketing professionals, professional staff all work in a university. So third tier universities are a crucial employer for early career researchers and enable graduate education and its development. Now, Birch, Perry and Taylor described universities as, quote, anchor institutions, end of quote. This is important because it allows local governments in particular to plan. If they've got an anchor institution, they can guarantee certain tax bases and a certain population size. But the problem with our third tier cities is their international invisibility. So the internationalisation of Paisley in Scotland, or Palmerston North in Aotearoa, New Zealand, or Renmark in Australia is pretty clear. So the type of university that exists in third tier cities are struggling universities. And the reason they struggle is everything is more difficult. The Vice Chancellor and the senior staff are hired, and they're often inexperienced. It's often their first post in that role, or indeed their last chance saloon appointment. And the deans and the faculty that are hired have come from a much smaller appointment or field of candidate base. So, attracting staff to live in these small cities is incredibly difficult, away from the larger urban environments and infrastructure. And if academics are hired, they are very often a FIFO workforce, fly in, fly out, rather than living permanently in the third tier city. So there are strengths and weaknesses of a regional university. I'll give you 5 of each. But let's take that for a walk. What does that mean for a human being living in this environment? Well, moving house is a nightmare. And then there's the complexity if you have a partner and you're trying to find some sort of work for them. Now, some institutions, particularly in Canada, respect to all the Canadians, have spousal policies. But I'll give you the very common narrative of what happens in regional universities, which explains why they can't get great staff and why they can't hold great staff. A regional city, and they exist around the world, of about 20,000 to 50,000 people, has one university or the outlier campus of a bigger second tier or global city university. This university is often the biggest employer in the region. The economies are brittle, health and educational services are limited. So you can see what happens. A partner can't find a job. And so therefore a bounce, an employment bounce occurs. So a family stays for about a year because the spouse is miserable, and that is the triple R problem. And of course, it is frequently a gendered problem. The trailing spouse is a woman. The structural challenges, therefore, are very clear. Very few universities exist in these environments, and the remote environments have very little connection to our universities except as placements for health and education. Therefore, options are restricted. There are 3 types of universities that exist in third tier cities. We see them in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We see them in Australia as well. We have a single institution, self-standing, based in a third tier city. Massey's the obvious example of that. We have a regional university with all their campuses spread through the third tier cities. Australia does that. CQU, CSU is an example. And of course, the outlier campus of a major second tier or global university. So, for example, the University of Otago has a campus in Invercargill. Easy. So the challenge we see, the problem with this modelling, is that expectations and aspirations of students are capped. One proxy for the capping of expectations, colleagues, is whether or not a tertiary education institute or provider can offer a PhD. Can they enrol a student, supervise a student, and graduate a student with a PhD? So this means, are they able to run an NZQF 10, an AQF 10 qualification? The presence of a PhD enrolment in these higher educational institutions is either enabling or capping of the expectations of citizens. Such a problem manifests deeply in regional and rural education. Students are sent out into regional locations for health and educational placements. But the notion of authentic students, supervisors, living and working in these locations and contextualising this regional living experience is simply absent from the literature. Therefore, let's move to my final bit of the day, hopefully much more positively. What do we do now? How do we make this work? Now, I finish off my little bit of the warm-up act of our presentations for International Women's Day to summon an initiative for us all to transform triple R environments. And I present 4 shapes for your consideration, colleagues. The first is simply a visualization of a timeline. A PhD has a beginning, a middle, and let's hope an end. And each stage offers distinct opportunities to build what I describe as the 3 C's: connection, communication, and community. How do students through these diverse locations communicate? How do they build a community? Well, that's my third shape that features quadrants with 4 words in them: analog, synchronous, digital, asynchronous. Now, each of these 4 squares dialogue and dance with each other. They have specific applications to enable particular identities, interfaces, and relationships, to enable all sorts of new ways of thinking about teaching and learning and research and supervision. So these 4 boxes, when they dance, can align at distinct points of the candidature wherever the student or the supervisor is located in the world. And my final shape for you is another triangle. In this case, the 3 Ds: digitisation, deterritorialisation, and disintermediation. Disintermediation involves a flattening of power structures, a removal of layers in the supply chain. Deterritorialisation unhooks a commitment to a singular territory and allows movement through time and space through digitisation. So from these 4 shapes, let me show you how together they can transform the triple R PhD. For students, weekly writing groups, and I've done a few in my life, the Write Bunch, Write Club, enable students to come together to share a synchronous digital portal, meet new people, gain support, even if they're disparate in terms of geography. But also reading groups, weekly reading groups. Participants can share the reading of scholarly work wherever they are in the world, but also shared social events that may involve sharing a cup of coffee, a whiteboard soiree, or digital office hours. Professional development sessions can also transform through flipped training, just in case professional development, which can of course involve a weekly video series, but also sound only podcasts, enlivening our soundscape. So for busy academics, this is a very, very efficient way to do professional development. Now, I know professional development is about as popular as teeth extraction, and I understand that. But you see, with this degree of efficiency, we're able to address some of the pretty serious matters that are emerging in international higher education through good professional development in understanding research integrity and academic integrity. New spaces are being built to challenge homology. What I'm trying to challenge here is how we were supervised is not how we are going to supervise. The goal is not to consider or apply a deficit model of teaching and learning, but an abundance model. We have the opportunity to enliven these remarkable places. So we talk with students directly. What do our students need in their own space, in their own time? Now, Teams, Zoom, like we're doing today, enables weekly meetings with supervisors, and presentations for milestones and so forth can be run in the region rather than students having to move to a capital city to do this stressful event. But strategies for connection and bespoke professional development and community building platforms are now available. So what I want, colleagues, what I want is I want our outstanding students living in regional, rural, and remote locations to live, to work, to dance, to enjoy their families, and to enfold a doctorate into their lives, rather than a doctorate disrupting and hurting their lives. This, colleagues, is a feminist project. Women are dominating our doctoral programs, and of course they dominate the health and education programs that dominate our regional universities. So these four shapes exist to block imposing urban knowledges over rural, regional, and remote knowledges. Now, Robert Chambers, in his remarkable book on rural development, believed that we have this incredibly unproductive binary opposition between urban and rural, between core and peripheral knowledges. And he argued that outsiders to triple R environments assume that their knowledge is superior to those living in these locations. Now, that superior knowledge from global cities and second-tier cities is being protected currently by blocking the award of PhDs in many institutions. Think about how many universities in our regional locations are capping the aspirations, the hopes of our students. Why can't a student do an authentic and meaningful PhD on Stewart Island or Arthur's Press, in Kangaroo Island or Bremer Bay? We're not imposing Auckland or Wellington or Christchurch or Melbourne or Brisbane or Sydney knowledges over the triple R regions. Instead, we're creating a new and collaborative environment via digitisation, where a portfolio of support is available. Now, this is the best case scenario, and you are our next generation of academic leaders. I am close to death. It's over for me. But you have some decisions to make. Who are you? Come on. What do you believe in? I want strong, different, defiant people to have the opportunity to gain an education, not a cut-priced experience where their aspirations, their ambitions are capped. But I want something, an education that's as good as anywhere in the world. Now, we in international education right now, we are failing at this goal. And there are many causes for that failure in regional education. And one of them is, yes, a failure of leadership. Because these regional, rural, and remote locations are framed as in deficit, the leaders that go out to these universities use it as a career stepping stone to get a better job, or indeed as the final payday before they retire. So this is our challenge for your generation of academics and for mine, to commit to regional education. You colleagues, you are brilliant. You are socially just. And today and in all the days that follow, you will make a difference. You can lead, and you can lead well. And you can transform our nations from regional, rural, and remote locations, not by demonising, not by marginalising or applying a deficit model of teaching and learning, but by lifting up and creating an infrastructure of care. Thank you, colleagues. Now, so colleagues, that's great. Can I just, oh, thank you, Harpreet. It's lovely to see you, my darling. Have we got Professor Sitoli with us? I'm just checking if she's around. Have I got you? Oh, it's
Yes.
wonderful. So I'll do, while you're setting up your PowerPoint, my love, I'll tell everybody how amazing you are and how lucky we are to have you. So you should be able to share your PowerPoint if you want to. So it is my great pleasure now that the warm-up act is over to introduce you to Professor Lethware Nazama Sitole, remarkable woman. She is an outstanding researcher, is incredibly publicly active in understanding public finances in particular, a remarkable person, and she's joining us very, very late at night from the University of Johannesburg, and she's speaking on, I'm so excited, this is 2024 research, there's women in academia within the South African context. All yours, my love. Good luck, Lethwe.
Thank you so much, Prof, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm going to be presenting a study that I've conducted with my colleagues from University of Johannesburg. We conducted a study last year, 2024, when we were doing a course, a Women Leadership Development Program within the university. And our focus on the study was to investigate the increase of female representation in senior roles, because we saw that within the university, we were struggling to get women in associate professor and full professor positions. Then with the ladies that I had with me, these are the ladies which were in the team, and we are in different ranks. Others are from operations, others are in academia. I'm the third one presented in this picture. And we called ourselves Sisters of Scholarly Success, because we are really driven in terms of success of women and supporting each other and creating that sisterhood within the university. So just to deplete on what you are seeing on the picture, we have seen, and we have this SDG 5, which talk about equality, SDG 10, which also speak about reducing inequality. So in the pursuit of gender equality, as it remains a significant challenge in South Africa, particularly within academic sphere, the problem identified by the group of females that as females, we are underrepresented in senior roles such as associate professor and professor. And the university has set a strategic objective to reach a target of 44% of its senior staff to be females. So UJ had a number of initiatives that they have aimed to transform the university to empower young academics. And one of the programs was the one where the SS Sisters of Scholarly Success was formed. But despite these initiatives, the study believes that there is an urgent need for not only University of Johannesburg, but all other universities in South Africa to prioritize the gender parity in promotions. And just to reflect on what you presented, Prof, when you said in regional universities, there are easier promotions. We are in the urban area and promotions are not easy. And the case point and reflecting on my own journey, I got promoted in 2024. However, it was my third attempt in applying for that promotion. But finally, as they say, that time lucky, I got lucky that time. But in this topic of our study, we focus on increasing the female representation in senior roles. And just to give context in terms of research question, we had asked this following question in terms of how can female representations in senior roles as AP and full professor increase to reach the goal that has been set by the university? Because there was a goal, which is strategic plan, which for 2025, which needed to be met this year, 2025, of fitness for global excellence and stature, and also to ensure that we contribute to SDG 5 and SDG 10 of reducing inequality and increasing gender equality. Just to give context in terms of literature review that we found is that in South Africa, a history of the struggle in terms of gender equality dates back to 1956, marked by the iconic Women March in Pretoria against Operation Pass Laws. And in South Africa, we celebrate Women's Day on the 8th of August, 8th or 9th of August. Here we had females who were ambitious to fight for the rights of women. And in business as well, we have seen women predominantly being minority in top tier positions. However, over the past 40, 50 years, with the presence of influence and has increased in terms of significance. And in academia, we note that although women are graduates, when it comes to number of the students that we produce, majority are women. However, when we look at academic positions, we have females, but in lecturer, senior lecturer roles. But in terms of associate professor, that's still an issue in terms of limitation. In our study, we followed the following methodology. We had done a survey to get information from colleagues within the university. And with that, we looked at multiple methods where we focus on both qualitative and quantitative methods, and we looked at descriptive statistics and thematic analysis, and we found that there were limitations of our study because we only got our senior lecturers who are females to participate in the study, which then resulted a limitation. But we also made an assumption that women wanted to become associate professors or full professors. We had applied for ethical clearance to ensure that our study does not have any negative ethical implication, and our participants are also protected in terms of anonymity. In terms of what we wanted to focus on in the questionnaire, we had 5 themes, 5 contracts that we wanted to focus on, just to get to understand if women are aware of the process that they need to follow when applying for promotion. We also looked at the perception in terms of how do women feel about being promoted to associate professor and full professor within the university. That a construct was the support, asking women if they felt supported, they felt they were given opportunity to develop themselves to get into the positions. Also, we looked at the barriers and challenges that women felt within the university. Lastly, we also looked at the representation and target that has been set by the university, and as indicated, we were targeting 44% of the university. In terms of awareness, there were colleagues who participated and shared their views in terms of how aware they were with the process. And with the results of the quantitative method, we saw that it became evident that there was a quite concern with perception of fairness and achievability, where only 2.6% out of 5 mean score was that there was a perception that the process is not fair. Then that also made us more curious in terms of qualitative results, just to understand the themes that we came about. Then in terms of the negative qualitative results, there were issues that women had indicated, saying they have seen that there might have been issues of gender biasness, there might have been challenges and hurdles, and some of that, I'm going to quote some of the notes that have been indicated by colleagues, where they say the more fair and standard uniform approach could be enhanced to eliminate current traces of favoritism. So some colleagues who participated, they found, or they had a view that maybe there is biasness when the process of promotion is put in place. Others also felt like they had to balance between family life and work, and others would say, I prefer to balance my family and only focus on promotion at a later stage, meaning they would neglect applying for promotion, but focus on having a balanced and happy family. Others who also shared aspects of support for women promotion, where they said they felt that female staff are good in terms of admin and student engagement, which prevents them to focus on research, as they prefer teaching than conducting research, because to be promoted, you need to be able to contribute in teaching, contribute in community engagement and research. However, some will say, I'm only good as a teacher and not as a researcher, therefore I might not be suitable to apply for promotion. Other negative aspects that the females have shared is that they had challenges in terms of submitting. So another quote was, I feel as though the message is entirely different at the promotion workshop compared to what happens when one actually applies for promotion. So in terms, when they are in the workshop, they feel they are encouraged to apply, they feel supported, but when now they apply, the feedback they get is different from what has been presented in the workshop. Other negative feedback that we got from colleagues was that they were not aware of a mentorship program within the university. And I, for one, am part of a program in mentorship. Then that also indicates that some females are not really aware of their surroundings, or they don't take opportunities when they are presented to them, then which results them not being promoted from a senior lecturer to associate professor or even full professor. Other negative feedback that we saw in terms of our themes was that the reality is that research will always contribute more than teaching. And again, research is my barrier. Then going back to what I've shared earlier, that some females prefer to be in class engaging with students than sitting down and doing research. Another aspect of promoting to associate professor to full professor is that one needs to have a PhD, and one needs to also have supervised PhD students. But with the lack of love for research, we find females struggling to get to associate professor role and full professor role because they're not prepared to conduct research. On another note, in terms of positivity, thankfully, there were positive outputs that were shared by other females who had shared that current initiatives are good. Feedback in terms of opportunities such as this one, they were referring to the study that we conducted because they said it's an opportunity for them to voice their views and assist the university to reach the target. Another one was that maybe there should be a provision for females to have their own writing retreats, because when their writing retreats are in place, it assists women who are not confident in conducting research to now focus on research. And last point to share as well was that one of the participants indicated that the clear monitoring of female academics needs to be done independently of line managers, meaning one needs to have someone on the side as a role model, as someone who will guide and coach so that they can understand what needs to be done for them to be promoted from associate professor to full professor. And lastly, there was one who said we need more role models and time allocated for preparing all evidence needed for one to be promoted. Because just to give context, within our university, for you to be promoted, you need to send in an application with your teaching portfolio, with evidence of all the claims that you have made in terms of contributing to both teaching, research, and community engagement. Colleagues, based on the study that we found, we have proposed the alternative solutions to the opportunity that we saw so that the university can reach the target of 44% and above, ensuring that we have a representative of females in terms of 44% and above in associate professor role and full professor position. And for that, the university might need to then enhance the transparency of promotion, where women will be aware of the fair processes that is there and clarity of criteria that need to be met for one to be promoted. Maybe there should be revision on the current portfolio and process that is being used for promotion, as this will benefit clear and accessible promotion requirements. And that will lead to the regional university that Prof has shared in terms of saying in other universities it's easy to get promoted. In terms of advancement program, we say also as another another benefit might be having an advanced program dedicated to females in senior lecturer role who would move to associate professor and full professor. Because once there's clear guidance, people are focused in terms of developing their leadership role and career planning and talent management, it will be easy for university to reach the SDG 5 and 10, and also SDG 8 in terms of contributing to a conducive work environment. And the third alternative solution was that there should be targeted hiring and promotional goals. When we say hiring, is that who do you recruit? When you recruit someone, are you aware of the gaps? And if they have gaps, you need to be intentional as a university to say, how do we capacitate someone and also guide them so that they know that there is a tenure for them to move along to get to that full professorship that they might need. And lastly, there might need to be flexible working hours, because we know as for females, we have multiple commitments, especially if we have families to take care of. And that does not mean that only those who are mothers need to have flexibility, but everyone who has other commitment, it can be with your fair child that you need to take care of, or other commitments. Even if you just have a partner, you need to have time with them. And if you're going to be immersed in academia, you would not have that mental health and well-being that you need as an academic. So there should be proper balance, and through flexible working policy, that is possible. And just to also reflect on the study that we had focused on, I'll give you back in terms of class ceiling. The effect of colleagues within the university not getting to associate professor to full professor level was an issue. And also the promotion criteria was an issue where colleagues who participated saw that promotion was not clear. Mentorship is there. However, there were colleagues who felt the mentorship program was not efficient or effective enough, and some of them were not even aware of it. So our study recommends that there should be intentional and deliberate programs that are put in for women which are well promoted, and women also see the benefits of being part of those programs, because once they are robust mentorship program, that will also create opportunities for women to network within themselves. Because with mentorship is not only different rankings, even in same rankings as peer mentorship, that can also happen. And others who are mentors can also be mentored by their mentees, because there is a concept of reverse mentorship that can occur. And with the promotion, there should be transparency and inclusive culture where the club boys, because we've seen as well that sometimes there can be a culture of the club of boys who get to be promoted, who get to be supported, but not females. So maybe with females as well, there might be an action for calls asking females to support one another. And as women move up the ranks, to remember to lift as they rise and put that down for those who are upcoming as academics to be supported as well, because that will ensure that the university has an inclusive culture that we need as the university and the country, and will contribute to sustainability SDG 5 and 10. Colleagues, thank you so much. That was a presentation by the Study of Scholarly Success through the Women Leadership Program within the university. And we believe it is doable once we are clear as women. And also as women, we should avoid those invisible barriers that we set within ourselves. Yes, there are systematic barriers, but there are other barriers that are set by females themselves through not being organized, not being able to manage their time, having lack of confidence, and not being courageous enough and confident to take opportunities, because opportunities will need to find you when you are ready. But for you to prepare for them, you need to ensure you upskill and you have networks around you so that you can prepare for promotions and other opportunities so you can contribute to academia. Thank you so much, Prof.
Oh, Lethwi, my goodness me, that was amazing. I hope you're seeing people losing their mind around your fabulousness. We are so moved. We are so much smarter than we were 15 minutes ago. I don't know if you're going to be able to hang around for a question time in a half an hour. I hope you will.
Yes,
I've got a list. I
yes.
think everybody else has. Lethwi, my love, I thank you so much for joining us in the middle of the night. It's amazing. I'm changed. Can we? Oh, and you're a star. And how glamorous are you as well? What time is it there, by the way, Leathway?
It is 19 minutes past 10 in the evening.
Well, you are amazing, and if you can hang with us, there'll be
Thank you.
questions for you. You've changed our lives.
Yes,
Can we move to the remarkable Victoria Beckwith? Vicky, please share your screen if you would like to now, my love. Now, I've really loved getting to know Vicky through putting this gig together. She is a passionate advocate for learners with dyslexia. She believes in every child and valuing every child's story. And so let's share with Vicky now a rural child story, challenging questions from a woman in our future. Vicky, all over to you, mate. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Kia ora, everyone. I'm based in New Zealand and my PhD is with the University of Waikato, but I'm a distance student, so I'm hours away from Waikato. So my presentation is based on research that I've completed in 2023, and my 5 participants were all 12-year-old children, all females, and this is one particular child's voice. So this is my research. I'm doing semi-structured interviews. I did them in 2023 with these children. I'm looking for elements of surprise, the punctum in photographs and in our conversations. And I'm looking and talking with these 12-year-olds and finding out what their lived experiences are of global citizenship and what it's like to be a global citizen at 12 in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So in interview one, I was thinking I've only met them as a class. I was introduced to them and invited them to take part in the research. I wasn't expecting much because it was our first face-to-face, one-on-one in a room just off reception in the school. So it was like, okay, we're just going to introduce each other. Um, I met Flower. This is her choice of pseudonym. It's beautiful. They all chose their own. Flower chose Flower. And then during the discussion, first interview, it's like, what would happen if we didn't have any global citizens? The world would fall apart. If we don't have global citizens, then what are people going to do? And it's like, okay, how are we going to get on an interview 4 after a period of reflection? So this was quite challenging right at the outset. And she carried on. What are people going to do about the floods, the lockdowns, how much things are right now, the prices of things, how much houses cost, how much the food groceries are, taking the kids to school without a car? I thought, crumbs, there's a lot going on in rural New Zealand. Okay, we had a period of flooding, but she was also thinking about the global situation for everybody, not just a 12-year-old child in the Rangitikei, which is a rural area of New Zealand in the centre of the North Island. And I thought, gosh, these are the photos. This is a photograph from Flower. This was taken in a very stark winter, and I thought this is where our conversation is going. It's stark, it's bleak. Oh my goodness, where is the hope for these children? And this is why I chose children to talk to. They're disruptors. They help us visualize and see what's going on in our environment around us that we might take for granted as adults or we may not notice. And I think for Aotearoa New Zealand, we have a really unique perspective when we work with 12-year-olds. Because around the world, 12-year-olds are often in the senior part of their education at secondary school, at high school. They're in the exam cycle. They're in a different world with the 11 to 18-year-olds getting ready to transition into the workplace or into tertiary education. But in Aotearoa New Zealand, our beautiful 12-year-olds are still in the primary school or intermediate school sectors. Now, in the Rangitikei, we don't have intermediate schools, which are for the sort of 10 to 12-year-olds. We just have primary schools, and we have one senior school, which teaches 13 to 18. The primary schools are 5 to 12-year-olds, and we have an area school which teaches 5 to 18 as one school. So our 12-year-olds are the role models in their primary school here. They're the leaders. They're being exposed to changes in how they view the world. They're being exposed to leadership roles. They're looking forward to going into high school, but they are role models for all of the years before them. So they're in a very unique position, but they're also in the innocence of primary school without that exam cycle. So their views are really important. And I was captured in lockdown with this group of children, the 10 to 12-year-olds, and I was really interested in their insights as they had conversations over gaming platforms and the phone and all sorts of things. And so this is why I picked this group, because I was really interested in their perspectives and points of view. So we looked at, I like photography. I use it in my teaching. I use it to explain things. It's really key for what I do all of my life. When I saved up to buy my first camera at 10, quite a few decades ago now. And they make us look at what is going on, and people can use photographs to show other people things. And these are Flower's words. I was really taken aback with the philosophical nature of her words, because I wasn't expecting this. This fits in with my phenomenology and the study and the going over of all the words and listening again and again, because she's questioning us about our photography and about what the photographs, what do they do when we're taking pictures? What do they do when we're not there? And it's like, oh, okay, this is like really deep, meaningful stuff, and that she's reflecting upon, and why we're taking pictures. So her outlook and her reflection was way beyond what I expected at 12 years. And these were the challenges that she thought were affecting the world. This isn't just her rural Rangitikei existence. This is all of the towns, all of the rural places all around the world. And this was her worry and what she felt the challenges were in the whole world. But then we return to this beautiful view behind me. This is her photograph again. And it's like, wow, this is where she lives. This is what she loves. This is normal. I can understand this. This is the rural that I grew up with when I was 12. And this is her world. This is what she loves. She goes into town, she gets some groceries, swimming, hanging out with her friends. She loves her school, animals. She just is joyous about the nature around her, the environment, the climate, and she likes how that people are talking to each other if they need help. This is her world, as well as all that stark, challenging information that she gave us before. And so these pictures, these photographs, and these ways of talking and how she's describing her world, they help us see what she's doing in her life and how she sees our world. And then we can work out, gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Let's think about that and reflect on that some more as an adult, as a policymaker, and see what directions we can take. And these are her photographs, sharing her joy of what she had around her, how she saw the world. She thinks very holistically. And so she's considering the environment, the climate, and the animals and everything in that image. She looks at the textures, the colors, inviting us to really think about what we're looking at and what she's taking the picture of. And about the senses as well. She was always aware of the beauty around us, the function of the nature around us, the smells, the sights, the sounds, and the emotions that are connected. This may be a blurry picture, but this was her favorite picture. It made her happy. She had her Highland cattle on the vase behind. She had her colors and the textures. She was aware of the water in the jar. She was aware of the home for the bugs that inhabited some of the flowers in the garden, and she just felt so happy. So we come to the last interview. We'd looked at the photographs and discussed them all. And I thought, gosh, the heavy questions are an interview one. Okay, the world's going to fall apart, but actually it's a joyous place to be in. I was a bit nervous about interview 4, to be honest with you. And yes, rightly so, because she was now asking these questions of us all. How would we survive? She was reflecting on the chapter that we'd just done, all the interviews, the photography, and she was reflecting on a new chapter, and it's made her think more about the world than just sitting inside and looking at the world around us. We need to actually take a step outside, be in the fresh air, doing this differently. And everything evolves around the world, like the trees, the sea. And if we didn't have that, then how would we survive? This is a very challenging question. And she was thinking about what we need to do as a global citizen, what it's like to be a global citizen. And considering the environment around us, we have to protect trees and plants because we need oxygen, we need shelter. And if we didn't have those things, then how would we have houses and buildings and shelter for us and our animals? And it's really like looking at things around the world, what we can do to help, what we can do. We can plant more trees, we can plant more flowers. And she's thinking about the ecosystems, the symbiotic relationships we have, and questioning if we didn't have animals, let us look at what we've got around us. If we didn't have these things, how would we survive? What about the water? What about the trees? And these are all things that we need to survive as human beings. And she even had a few words for the teachers amongst us. Look around the world and see what you can actually do to protect it. I love the word actually. It's really enforcing that upon us. And going around and seeing this and seeing that is not going to do our world any good because the global is suffering because of climate change. She's really putting on us to think about our actions. And she continued that the global space is suffering because of the war, because people can't actually do the right thing at the right time, at the right place, and everyone is showing disrespect. So we'd come into this stark arena again, which is very deep for a 12-year-old who only knew me through 4 interviews, and I'm really honoured with her words. And all this strife that's going on, the starkness, it's not showing how that people can do one thing, and that is protecting the world around you. So as individuals, we can do that. As communities, as nations, we can do that if we look to things anew. And this is what she felt was important for a global citizen, helping people, helping animals, and being confident. And in conclusion, this was her at the end of 4 interviews thinking about these photographs, thinking about the world, and she still felt the amount of hope and joy that she took from being in nature was fantastic. She felt that she could contribute a lot, just seeing what is out there, what she can do, and what kind of adventures she can go on. She was outstanding. I'd thank all these people for everything they do in supporting me in a very lengthy PhD with Waikato. My supervisors are very tolerant. And this opportunity today, thank you very much, Tara. And I couldn't do any of this without Flower and her voice and sharing of her reflections and the faith that she's put in me to remain to keep my integrity about her work and her voice. I'm very privileged to carry that forward over the next few years in my study. So thank you very much, Tara. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Can we all just thank Vicky for being amazing? Look, as the old goth in the family, to be talking about joy and happiness and optimism, I feel incredibly changed. Vicky, that is amazing research. And again, if you can hang around for the question time too, I've got a list. I'm sure everybody else has as well. You're amazing, Vicky. That is transformative methodologically and ontologically. My brain has exploded. But look, we need to go, Vicky, to the glamour central that is Palmerston North Library. We've seen this wonderful group of remarkable women that are hiding from us behind a row of chairs. So we're trying to not take that personally, that's a particular, that's like a social prophylactic. You won't take it seriously. But look, we're going to our next speaker, who is Robin Wilson. Now, Robin is a librarian, a senior service guide at Palmerston North City Library. And look, I've got a little secret to share with you about Robin. Robin has served the library profession and indeed citizenship throughout her entire career. And I have to acknowledge that she finished work on March 3. So she has retired with the final retirement date coming in April. So on behalf of all of us as humans, we need to thank Robin for her commitment to ideas, to knowledge, and to citizenship, a lifelong commitment. And we are privileged to hear her speak today as her final sort of effort in the workplace, libraries and the third space. Robin, over to you, my queen. You're on mute in the room, team. I can't unmute you, but I can ask you to unmute. Gee, it's memories of 2020 again, isn't it?
Right, you can hear me now?
I certainly can.
Right, thank you for your kind words. Tara's right, okay. The United Nations lists the top 3 basic human necessities as food, shelter, and internet access to information. A common thread in the world of libraries is that libraries are our third space. The first being your home, the second your place of work. In many communities, the library is their only way to access information. For others, it is a safe place just to be part of a community, no pressure to contribute, yet it still fulfills the human need to belong, hence the idea of third space. Public libraries in New Zealand are amongst the best in the world, offering a wider range of resources and services than what most people realise. I believe the greatest resource in the library is the staff. Public library staff know their collections really well. They upskill, they attend conferences and workshops, and nearly all staff shelve books daily. Many of the staff are very well read and travelled. Some of the more quirkier staff know lots about obscure things. For example, in a staff presentation regarding council recycling, came the comment, just add diesel to polystyrene and you've got napalm. So I'm Robin Wilson. I have a Master's in Library and Information Systems. I'm currently employed within Palmerston North City Libraries for not for much longer, as Tara said, I retire in April. I thought it would be useful to take you through creating a library card for a rural lady. So I've invented Raywin, a conglomeration of many rural patrons I've helped over the last 20 years to illustrate how our resources meet and often exceed expectations. I would start by asking Raywin, does she live in the Palmerston North rate-paying area? If so, everything's free. If not, we charge rural country members $120 per household per year, the same as what we get through the rates bills. So it doesn't matter if she's got 6 kids plus Nana and 21 uncles all living at that address. The 120 covers them all, and each one of them can have a card. We need to see photo identification like a driver's license or a passport and proof of address, top of your bank account, something from the government as usual, and access via cell phone is perfectly acceptable. Children are not required to provide identification. Raywin tells me they live an hour's drive in the country from Palmerston North. Libraries nearer her do not have all the resources she's looking for. She tells me she lives with her husband, who's ex-military, and 4 children, which she homeschools. So I'd start by making the children a card each by asking Raywin about the children's interests and reading levels. Keeping a mental note of the children's interest, I go on to make Raywin a card and one for her husband if he's there. Time to explain a bit about the library and how it's arranged. So starting with our physical libraries, we have 4 branch libraries, all about the size of a 3-bedroom house. We have a library bus, plus an arrangement with the military library at Linton Army Camp. Your card will work in all these locations, and you can have up to 50 items out at any one time on your card. Book return bins are located around the city. You can't miss them. They're 5 foot high, they're brightly coloured, shaped like a book. Books are issued for 3 weeks, and you can renew them online, by phone or in person, as long as there's no existing holds. I would then point out in general terms the specific areas of the Central Library. So New Zealand history plus Maori and Pacific Island collections are all on the 2nd floor. The 1st floor has the main book collection. DVDs and teenage literature are on the mezzanine floor, and computer access is on the ground floor. Teenagers have their own youth space building in the next street, and makerspaces access from the square outside of our building. I would then mention our books are shelved in living rooms and organised by author or Dewey order. The living room concept is borrowed from Scandinavian libraries. It keeps the books about a topic, say dementia, which is in our Memories Matters living room, all in one area and in Dewey order within that space.
Wow.
So that's a brief overview of the library. Let's get the husband organised first. So as he's ex-mil, I presume he's interested in the Second World War plus Afghanistan and Vietnam. New Zealand war content is on the 2nd floor at the Dewey number 940. On the 1st floor, he should look in Countries Global living room, as that covers World War I and II. Countries Asia will have Afghanistan and Vietnam wars. Society has books relating to military figures or regiments. And in transport, we have lots on military planes, some on tanks, and there's a couple on naval frigates. We have a database entitled Military and Intelligence, which can be accessed from our website via your library card and PIN number. We'd then put the husband on the military talk mailing list, and those talks are really well attended. If he reads fiction, there's several SAS authors that we can recommend. So next, I'd ask, do they have good, reliable internet access at home?
There it is.
Yeah. Do any of the children or herself use an iPad, a tablet, smart TV? I would ask if anyone in the household is or thinking of doing any study. I ask what subjects they're interested in. Is there a group that they would like to join and need contact details? From there, I can steer them to specific resources. I recommend Raywin take a good look at our list of databases and apps listed on the library's website. I'll then demonstrate exactly where to find them and jot them down on a bit of paper for future reference, and tell her she just needs her library card number and her PIN number to gain access to these databases. Many of the databases will be invaluable for the children's education, while the apps offer e-books, e-audio books, e-magazines, local and foreign newspapers, movies and TV programs and documentaries, all free of charge. Raymond is fortunate where she lives that she has a good internet connection. If she didn't, a good plan B would be to download audio books and e-books while in town using the library's free Wi-Fi. So now we address the children. Child 1 reads sci-fi books, so I point out the youth collection, refer them to the databases and apps which would help with homework. Also youth space, because this is a safe place to meet and interact with teenagers in the city. Child 2, this child's into Minecraft, and in my experience, Minecraft books are always out online, so I recommend they reserve a few time. And we regularly have Minecraft sessions run at some of our branch libraries. Susan mentions this particular child is slow and reluctant to read. I'd encourage her to involve all the children in the summer reading program, where over 3 sessions the children read to librarians, receive incentive gifts, it's like bribery, and attend the finale party, come sausage sizzle at the Esplanade Gardens, where every child receives a new book and a certificate of completion.
It's amazing.
I also mentioned the adult learning session, where adults can learn to read English as an adult. This access to this collection often makes a child feel really good. It's great for their self-esteem, their little chest puff out. And nothing of an overly sexual or violent nature is in these books. Child 3, crafts really excite this child. They love learning and creating art, making presents, baking. So we've got a dedicated art and craft section next to the cooking books in the children's area. This child would enjoy the app Creative Bug, which demonstrates craft lessons free of charge. In Makerspace, they might enjoy printing designs onto a t-shirt. Child 4, the youngest child has a wicked sense of humour, and so is sent to the children's humour living room and the graphic novel area. The child has a good ear for te reo, and all the siblings would be shown te reo resources. I recommend Makerspace, as they could learn to make quirky badges or use a 3D printer to make an action figure or maybe a dragon. All the children, as I said, would benefit from exposure to Makerspace. A Makerspace is a place where people can go and use machines that they might not have access to at home or afford to purchase. We have 6 electronic sewing machines, 2 overlockers, an embroidery machine, and I've heard we've got a quilting machine. We have a CNC router, laser cutter, vinyl cutter, and at least 6 3D printers, badge makers and soldering irons. We have dedicated rooms for woodwork and metalwork. We don't have a welding machine because originally the floor was covered in carpet and the thought of fire was too horrible to contemplate. Now it's Raymond's turn. I'll tell Raymond about the monthly stitching group and suggest she and the children visit on those Saturdays, and while the children are choosing books, she can network with a new range of people. Raymond tells me she's interested in art, specifically jewellery, and has been thinking of running a small business from the farm. Raymond admits she didn't progress beyond 3 years at high school and is a bit nervous about running a business. And so I tell Raymond about the often quoted adage, a common man can educate himself via a well-stocked public library. So firstly, I inform Raymond about the business and economics living room, which includes books on entrepreneurship, staff management, and small business management. A good specific title to start with could be How to Style Your Brand. We have books specifically about women in business and their experiences, and I would encourage Raymond to look at jewellery books in our extensive art and craft collection, and books on the aristocracy, ancient Roman jewellery. Secondly, we have several business databases, and I recommend you look at our Gale Database Entrepreneurship and the Gale Plan Builder. Thirdly, Makerspace is a laser cutter which can be used to cut acrylic for making earrings and other jewellery items. The staff would work with Raywin, teaching her how to use the design computers and the laser cutter, enabling her to develop a product and produce enough, say, for a craft store or a small online business. Later, she'll have samples to show investors or manufacturers when she's ready to take the business to the next level. Lastly, I'll explain the importance of networking among other business people and give her the contacts to access her local business association and hopefully get a business mentor. Raywin's family is linked to a marae nearby, and this could be another really good area of support and networking. I would suggest she see what the local farmers association in her area is and network with them. I'd also say that she has many of the skills needed in business, such as time management, meeting deadlines, managing staff and budgets. After all, she wrangles a husband plus 4 children and no doubt contributes to farm work. Raywin, girls can do anything and both libraries. Thank you.
How amazing is Robin? Oh, Robin, that was absolutely phenomenal. As I've sort of said, the stunning bit to me is we think of the public library, but what you've shown there is all the libraries that are within a singular public library. Just superb. Look, while we're in the room, should we start with Glamour Central, that is the Palmerston North room? What questions would you like to ask about from our three remarkable speakers? Any questions from the room? Silence.
Vicky, could you tell us a little bit more about what you're going to do next? What's the next stage of this amazing research that you've done, these interviews with these children? What are your next questions or interviews focused?
I'm wrapped up with the ongoing literature review and lots of reading, which isn't my favourite area, and writing. So yeah, my supervisors are very good at keeping me in check over that. I'm using that research to write to other things and link it in with the work I do in advocacy for neurodivergence and photography and things like that. So I'm bearing in mind I need to complete a PhD, so I've got that to do, but I'm also aware that I need to use these voices to help me understand other areas and how we use photography to explore different voices as well.
Brilliant, Vicky. Lethwe, could I ask you a quick one before we go back to the room as well? I've got about 57 questions to ask you, so I'll send you an email at the conclusion of this gig. But can I ask you a really tough question? You talked in the first 5 minutes about the value of targets, about the importance and the value of actually, you know what, if you want women in leadership, you're going to have a target. Now, obviously, with all the EDI DEI nonsense that's happening on the planet at the moment, which is racist, sexist, homophobic, we know all of that. Would you like to speak to targets and their value or not?
I would like to speak regarding that because for universities to get funding, they need to have to reach targets, and the targets are set by the Department of Higher Education. So for them to get injected in terms of funding, they need to ensure that they meet those targets, because as a university, you need to have a strategy. Without a strategy, you'll be everywhere. So the targets are a driver in terms of showing and guiding in terms of how do we progress as a university to reach where we need to be. So the target of 44%, although it's not even half, it's quite less because in terms of population, women are more than men. So the target of 44% is quite not substantial, because it needs to be more and represent the population we have in the country. And as I presented earlier, saying when we graduate students, majority is females, but when you now reflect in terms of employment, you find in executive level, both in business and academia, it's mostly men and not women. So what happens to women?
That's right. So it's either a plateau, a glass ceiling, or indeed, what was the other great one? A glass labyrinth. So it takes women a lot longer to get to a position of power and leadership as well as, and that seems to be what your research is finding.
Yes, it does. It takes longer, and some women decide not even to aspire to be promoted to associate professor. They settle in junior positions because they prefer to teach and not do the research because they feel it's time consuming and they should be raising kids and focus on that, unlike aspiring to get promoted. Because if they aspire to be promoted, sometimes they feel the system is not favorable. There are a lot of hurdles to navigate for you to get to those positions.
Fascinating. Oh, absolutely brilliant. So as I said, can I say you're going to end up a vice chancellor? So we've seen this remarkable woman at this early stage of her career. You're going to end up vice chancellor, I've no doubt in my mind. Now, colleagues, anyone would like to ask another question? We've got about 3 minutes left. Are there any questions to ask? I'm sure there are hundreds. Who'd like to have a go?
Hi, it's Joe. Can I ask a question?
Oh, hello, Joe, you glamorous creature. Loving the shoes. Go for it, Joe.
You see those shoes?
I can certainly see your shoes. They're excellent. Yeah, I can see them good now. Thanks, mate.
So I was interested in the mentoring that was mentioned from South Africa. Yep. So we're a plug for Graduate Women New Zealand. We're doing a mentoring program, and I'd be really interested to know if there's a particular topic that you found really helpful to encourage young women into PhDs or academic career.
Prof. Tara, do you mind repeating the question? Sorry, I had mentorship. Yes.
Is there a particular topic you found helpful in the mentoring program?
I'm not sure in terms of which question specifically, but in terms of mentorship, we mentor PhD students because I was part of the program myself, where there was also a coach that you'd meet on weekly basis just to tell them, because they're accountable partner, where you set targets for yourself and they guide you and say, did you meet that target? And with that mentorship and coaching, they're not focusing on your PhD only, even your self-awareness, your mindfulness, because you still need to remember to embrace humanity while doing this PhD. So the topics also that if I'm responding to your question, we found as well that as we mentor students not only for PhD, also undergrad, because I was a chairperson of a program that we ran for mentorship, and I did a cross-sectional study to find if the program assisted students to be resilient and have quality of life. So I used a resilience scale, and I found that the students had high resilience because of the mentorship program that we ran. And as I focused on COVID-19, the year 2020, 2022, asking the students, how did you find the benefit of the program? Because we were isolated. It was a time of shock for everyone. Did you feel supported, and how was your quality of life? And the study indicated that students were well supported with good quality life and resilience. So the program, mentorship program, goes from undergrad to PhD, because and academics as well can benefit if they are intentional as well, because as a mentor, as a mentee as well, you need to know how you want to be mentored so you can guide your mentor and give them direction on how you need to be supported. It's a matter of supply and demand. A mentor cannot supply if your demand is not visible and clear to them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
How brilliant is she? So Joe, that's brilliant, because that's about mentorship, contextualization around goals. I think that using coaching methodologies, I think that's brilliant. Can I just throw one quick question to Robin? Because I mean, again, I've got a list of questions for Robin, but Robin, you when you started your presentation, you talked magnificently about the library being a safe space, and you use that phrase, and that's a resonant phrase. Reflecting back on your career, which is a magnificent career of great power, have you got a sense that that role of safety has changed through your career? Is it more important now than it was when you started your career, or has it changed?
Society's changing, so there's a lot of people that aren't very well, and they all come into the library because libraries and parks are about the only place that anyone can go to. You can behave badly and get banned from the local shopping mall. So we get from the homeless to millionaires coming into a public library, and often we're quasi-social workers. Some of them will sit down and talk to us for ages. A lot of people that come in, a small proportion of people who come into the public library system, we don't have the skills to help, which is pretty tough. We do what we can. And to ban someone from a library to keep the rest of the public safe is not done lightly, and it's a very last resort. Yeah, it has to be pretty bad. Yeah.
Robin, I think you've really captured there. I talk a lot about the public good, and I probably talk about it in abstract too much, and you're living it and transforming it on a daily basis. So we all thank you for you and your transformative role in citizenship. You are amazing, amazing, Robin. So colleagues, that's our first little bit done. Leth, we may be about to go to bed, or she may stay with us a bit longer. We'll see how we go. But colleagues, our first hour is done. Are you all well? Are you doing well? Are you fantastic? Are we good? Woo, 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 woo. Let's go for it. And look, my next favourite person who I've met through this process, colleagues, is Harpreet Kaur. Now, I met her through organising this gig, so I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce her now. Harpreet is a woman of our time. She's a web developer, a programmer and a researcher, and she's taught computer science, which is tremendous, but she's also been active in Aotearoa New Zealand in app development and event management. But she's speaking to us today on a really crucial topic. I know there's a lot of people that are wanting to hear the recording of this if they can't get here today, because this topic is so meaningful. She's exploring understanding the transition to sustainable agriculture in rural Punjab, India. Now, Harpreet, I'm thrilled to hear this. Sustainable architecture is everything. Good luck, my love. Let's go for it. Oh, demute, darling. Yep.
Thank you very much, Professor Tara. Thank you very much for this. So I will share my screen. So we are this is it. Yeah. So I hope you are looking at my screen.
We got you.
Yes.
We got you, darling.
Yeah. So okay. First, I just do this thing because I can't see anybody of you. Okay. So, Kia ora and Sat Shri Akal, everyone. The research I'm going to present today, titled Understanding the Transition to Sustainable Agriculture in Rural Punjab, India, is part of my master thesis I'm conducting with Massey University at Palmerston North. Before I present the topic ahead, I would like to give a little bit background of why I select this research topic, background of it. I born and raised in Punjab in a farming family. I moved to New Zealand in 2017, and in these 8 years, New Zealand taught me a lot. And with the gained skills, I want to contribute to the development of my region, my farming community. And this is my first step forward to that space. Punjab geographically is just 1.53% of the total geographical space of India, but it contributes 45 to 47% of total wheat and total rice procurement to the national pool. And this huge contribution was made possible with the introduction of green revolution practices in Punjab in mid-1960s for growing high-yielding wheat and rice varieties. India was struggling to be a self-sufficient in food production after independence, and Punjab was strategically chosen because of the favorable, stable weather and climatic conditions, good soil quality, water resources, and large proportion of the large land holders. So Punjab farmers adopted these practices and contributed in making India a food secure nation. Since then, with the Punjab state government setup also providing the minimum support prices of growing rice and wheat, this uh, growing rice and wheat only became the first and the only preference of some farmers in Punjab. Almost 85% or towards 90% are just growing wheat and rice since the introduction of it in mid 1960s. This chart shows that. So you can see in 1960, paddy, the first bar, paddy was not even grown in Punjab in 1960s, just like 5% contributing the crop share. And then other crops were putting the rest of the share. But since the introduction, first with the wheat and then with the rice, now 85% coming to 2022, 85% of the share is just wheat and rice, and the other crops dropping significantly. This impacted the crop diversification of Punjab. But not only that, it impacted the adverse impact on soil health. Overuse of pesticides and fertilizers has worsened the soil health and introduces the compaction, hardpan formation, and with water resources, because it's water intensive agriculture practices, around 76% of the water blocks of Punjab is overexploited, the red blocks on this chart. And then degrading air quality. How is that? Because the residue after growing paddy is burned openly to grow the next crop. There is not much gap left for the residue management. But if there is a gap, some people are using the technology, but this is the easiest and the cheapest way to go to the next cycle. This one, when I was in India doing my field work, this season was going, the burning period, and it was very hard to breathe, even inside the house. So what is the way forward? State government and central government are promoting, even the global organizations are promoting to transition to sustainable agriculture. FAO defines sustainable agriculture as to be sustainable. Agriculture must meet the needs of present and future generations while ensuring profitability, environmental health, and social and economic equity. FAO calculate how the sustainable agriculture is in the country using this 11 indicators, 3 for economic, 5 for environmental, and 3 again for social. In this presentation, I will be covering the 5 environmental aspect recommendation in the context of Punjab for the soil health, for the water, for the use of fertilizers and pesticides, and biodiversity supportive practices. For these are the 4 recommendations made by the state government, central government, and the research units in Punjab. To understand, that's my research, to understand what is the farmer take on it, what's the experts take on these recommended practices to transition given the situation Punjab is currently facing. I met with 50 farmers spread across 15 villages and 8 experts, 3 from NGOs, 2 research scientists from Punjab Agriculture University, and some from government institutes. This is me going there, doing the field work. I just came back in January and completed it. I'm doing the analysis of the findings, and I will be presenting the initial findings of my analysis. So on the crop residue management, experts says we provide subsidies on machinery. People on the crop residue machinery, the technology, and so farmers can use that machinery. We do awareness and demo camps. We show how these machineries can be used. But the farmers take on it. We don't need subsidies on machinery. Every year, you generate new machinery, you develop new machinery, you give the subsidies, and that machinery does not even reach to us, to small and medium landholders. Only large landholders are capable of getting that subsidies with all the documents, with all the requirements. It doesn't reach to us. And even it does reach to us, the diesel cost to use that machinery is 20,000 per acre increase for us. And we are not generating enough money to support that. Our rent are so high, lease rates are so high. So do not give us subsidies on machinery. Just give the machinery to some central area to the village where we can go and get it. But give us a subsidy on diesel. because that's costing us a lot to use this machinery. And with the awareness and demo camps, that's now the internal conflicts in the villages. They are politically divided. Some support other parties, some support other parties. So if one organization are doing this, organizing this camp, the other side of the village doesn't come and doesn't get the information. So we need to take that part also in when planning. Second, for water resources, government is promoting and research is promoting direct seeded rice, and they are then giving subsidies on it, and then they are doing the camps on it. Some tried and failed, and farmers suggested to me that we are concerned for water levels. We are here to apply these techniques they are promoting, but they come here, they said to us, okay, do this, we do. But if we don't succeed, and there are things like farmers tried and they didn't succeed, but who is paying us? We are on a season to season income. Like if you take our demo farms, ensure that, okay, this much you are earning from, suppose 40,000 per acre from this growing this crop, we will give you 40,000 if that crop fail. Why will not do this? Okay, but you're giving us like not even 10% of it, just 1,500 rupees to try this. Why will do that? Need-based application of fertilizer and pesticide, judicious use. For that, expert says, do the soil testing, follow the leaf charts, follow the economic threshold, have the tensiometer, and they show these three technologies to me. But farmers said these technologies never reaches to them. These are the buzzwords for them. They never heard of it. So, and with the soil test, they say we don't, first, youth is migrating. We all see in news from Punjab specifically. They are lacking human resources. They are lacking time to go to the labs. Labs are not nearby. They are very far away. And then reports doesn't come. So the one suggestion from farmers are, you officers sitting in the offices in the labs, adopt our village, come one trip, get the samples, and then give us a report by WhatsApp if we don't use emails. So that's their suggestion. On crop diversification, experts say to diversify the crop, like Punjab is just growing 85% wheat and rice, only just 15% on other crops, and it would generate more income. And the guide on having a small to medium model farm, like what can be grown, and so that naturally we can satisfy the need of fertilizers and giving the chemical fertilizers. But this transition would take 3 years. And presently, research is more focused on wheat and rice, because one of the PAU researchers said to me that 85% is growing wheat and rice. So we will get more fund for doing the research on that, not on the other crops. So farmers are like, we want to try, we want to diversify, but the seed they are giving to us doesn't even work. And researchers agree that they don't have time to do more testing on it. And for the 3-year transition time, who will pay to farmers? And on one side, we are saying diversify the crop, grow, but where are the market? Where are the market to sell it? One of the farmer grow chilies as per advice to him, according to his soil properties. He grows, but then nobody bought it where he went. They were like going to malls, getting things from there, but he just sit there for 2 days and nobody bought chilies from him, and then he has to just throw them away or give to a religious place to use for free. So there need to be a setup. I, with all these findings on environmental, would like to conclude with one of the group said to me, they are aware of the impact on environment, human and animal health. These experts come to us sitting on top, say, do this, do that. We are willing to do. We want to do. Our kids are eating the same food. Our animals are eating poisoned fodder grown with chemicals. To transition, our advice to first start with dividing the area on the basis of crop can be grown here, available nearby market to buy the produce with assured guaranteed minimum support price, and meet the national food security needs. Conduct test of products for pesticide residues and give the premium price where found less. Why we take risk for quality if we don't get paid for quality? If the current system really wants farmers to be involved in the needed transition, do reach out to us with action plans, not just for blaming and document taking. If our present needs are served, why we will not contribute? Thank you.
Oh, Harpreet, that was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. And what you've captured there is the consequence of a blame culture. If one is interested in sustainability, it's again about the public good rather than shifting blame. So I think you've handled that brilliantly. Can you stay with us for a question time in about half an hour? That's great. You've changed our lives there. That is superb. So thank you, my love. Can we now move to the wonderful Jane? Do you want to de-share? Is that a verb? De-share your screen? Thank you, my love. You're a star. Well, I didn't see you in the nice burgundy too. That's a very nice top. That's very nice. You star. Brilliant. I really love that. Can we move now to the legendary Jane George? Again, wonderful human being that I've got to meet through this process. Registered social worker. Social workers change the world. And she's fulfilled the role of Director of Allied Health, both in Aotearoa, New Zealand and in the United Kingdom. And she's created all sorts of remarkable alignments between health and social policy development for universities and for governments. She's also an expert, and I'm a bit obsessed by this, about rural health workforce development, obsessed, and I'm really excited, colleagues, to hear her presentation today titled What Allied Health Practitioners Tell Us Matters when choosing rural health roles. Off we go, Jane. Thank you so much. Good luck. You are amazing.
Kia ora, Tara. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko waio. Ko kotirana te whakapaparanga mai, ingari ko waitaha te whenua tupu. No Brian George taku papa, no Naisby ia. No Nolene Tippin taku mama, no Granity ia. No Morven aho, kei o te tahi aho e noho ana. Hei tangata tiriti aho, a ko Aotearoa toku kāinga he mana no te tiriti o Waitangi, ko Jane George taku ingoa. In 2016, I was the Associate Director of Allied Health Scientific and Technical at Te Tai Opotini, what was then the West Coast DHB, the only completely rural health district in Aotearoa. I was operationally and clinically responsible for 26 discrete health professions and the most senior allied health professional on the coast. And we had a real problem. Our workforce was small, and any challenges we had with recruitment and retention had a huge impact for the approximately 23,000 people who lived across our district. The research at that time about rural workforce was largely focused on the medical workforce and focused on testing rural origin and rural training. That is, whether doctors are more likely to work rurally if they've been born or trained there. Now, I could see the logic in that, but I knew that being born rurally or trained there wasn't going to provide the numbers we needed in the short term. And I felt that there must be more to successful recruitment and retention than that. So I set out to find out, speaking directly with allied health professionals who have worked in rural settings to find out what really matters to them. My recruitment resulted in 55 people volunteering to take part in the study. My sample was drawn from a general population sample of adults who self-identified as allied health professionals with rural or remote healthcare experience. 18 participants were chosen using a purposive sampling method to capture voices across a range of professions and ethnicities. Now, as you can see, they were located across Aotearoa in rural areas R1, R2 and R3 as identified in Aotearoa's geographical classification for health. What you can't see here is that they were all women, rural women, who wear many hats alongside their professional roles as allied health professionals. Some were mothers, volunteer ambulance or fire and emergency officers, bus drivers, committee members, and the reserve army of primary industries through which rural communities provide the backbone of our country. My research was grounded in social justice theory, and I used Sally Thorne's interpretive descriptive methodology, Cooper Ryder and Whitney's appreciative inquiry approach was used during semi-structured interviews, and the data collected was analysed using Brown and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis. This analysis revealed 3 interconnected themes which determine whether allied health professionals stay in rural practice, with a concept of fit weaving through them all. The first theme, safe and supported practice, emerged as critical. Rural allied health professionals need proper tools, connectivity, and professional support to deliver quality care. They need leaders who understand rural realities. One participant shared how their manager spent a day in their remote clinic during a staffing crisis. Within 45 minutes of being here, she had 2 assessments to do. She went home after a 10-hour day enlightened and better connected to her rural community. Sense of connection and belonging, the second theme, is about feeling genuinely connected to team, community, and environment. One participant captured this beautifully. I'm thankful to be here. It's good to know you're where you're supposed to be. This connection extends beyond the workplace. It's about being part of the community fabric, building networks and contributing in ways that utilise unique skills. The third theme is about creating roles people want to come for. Rural roles must offer professional satisfaction through variety, growth pathways, and autonomy. As one participant noted, I want to stay rural because of all the unique things that make rural practice what it is. Many valued the chance to work across diverse age ranges and conditions, something not always possible in urban specialist roles. Underpinning all these themes is this concept of fit, that intangible sense of alignment between your values, the role, and the place. When an allied health professional feels this alignment, they describe it as it's like my dream job with greater life satisfaction. These findings tell us that successful recruitment and retention isn't just about financial incentives or bonding schemes. It's about creating environments where allied health professionals can connect, feel supported, and grow professionally in ways that align with their values. So how do we build a defiant future for rural allied health, applying these insights? My research produced practical recommendations for 5 key groups with the power to create change. Organisations need to challenge urban-centric thinking and champion rural allied health professionals, ensure equitable access to professional development, create clear pathways for rural career progression, and design policies that acknowledge rural realities. Recognise that rural generalist expertise is as valuable as urban specialisation. For line managers, relationship is everything. Spend time in remote locations to truly understand your team's context. Model boundaries, support professional growth, and build trust by assuming good intent. As one participant put it, I would rather work with pen and paper and no resources for someone who gives a damn. Professional bodies and regulators can make a huge difference by formally recognising rural generalist practice as a valuable career pathway. This gives mana to the unique skill set required to work across diverse needs and contexts in rural settings. Training institutions need to examine how allied health education can be delivered closer to home for rural rangatahi, our young people, develop rural immersion programs and rural generalist pathways that prepare allied health professionals for the realities of rural practice. For recruiters, remember, you are the window into your organisation's culture. Know the professions you're recruiting for, connect start dates so new staff can connect with each other, and recognise the importance of supporting partners and whānau, their families, to settle into the community. The power of these recommendations lies in their interconnectedness. When organisations, managers, recruiters, educators and regulators align their efforts, we create rural health systems where allied health professionals want to work. By implementing these changes, we aren't just addressing workforce shortages. We're building the defiant future our rural communities deserve, where skilled allied health professionals feel valued, supported, and able to deliver their best care. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Right. Jane, I'll follow you anywhere. So the first thing you need to know is wherever you're going, we're all following you, right? That is profound. I've written about 8 pages of notes with 70,000 questions. Can you hang around for the question time in the next little bit? Is that okay? Jane, again, you need to be running the world. You need to be running Aotearoa New Zealand, and you're really creating an intervention in allied health. And you'll see a wonderful woman by the name of Eunice, who we're going to be meeting shortly. Eunice, I think, has also become your biggest fan in the history of the world. So we're all going to follow you anywhere. You're the best, Jane. Colleagues, I'll now go to the next little bit of this story, if we can, with Dr. Cecily Jensen Clayton. Now, Cecily, you are here. Do you want to have a go at sharing a screen, Cecily? And I'll explain why we've just got to care for Cecily a bit, because Cecily is joining us from Cyclone Alfred, right in the middle of it. So Cecily, you're still with us. I've seen you come in and out. Oh, Cecily's there. That's great. So look, Cecily is an inspirational woman. I think I've known Cecily about 3 or 4 years, but I think she's got 2 doctorates, so she's an amazing human being. But she's one of those great people that we know of as futures researchers. Cecily's really interested in how leaders and leadership can enliven our communities, and she's very interested in, colleagues, inclusive entrepreneurship. So this is a wow for me. Cecily is a big-brained woman, and we're all about to learn a great deal if we can get her through a cyclone. Who knew this was a thing? Cecily, Miranda, my love, do you want to say hello? And the screen is yours. Good luck, my queen.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you everyone, because it's just so wonderful to be able to present my research that relates to the title of Mobilising Non-Compliant Futures. I've chosen this image on the right-hand side to represent the structural barriers that we face as women and as human beings. So, it'll continue throughout, just to remind us that there's a structure, and also that we have to transcend and change the landscape. So in this presentation, it'll be about futures thinking, about transcending negative effects of Western culture, futures thinking as trans-systemic thinking, about toggling between classical and quantum ways of imagining in this new energetic era that we're moving into. And futures thinking enacts non-compliant futures. And at the end of the presentation, I'll just give us 3 practical applications. So futures thinking, about transcending binary constructions and their conceptual challenges. It's about recognising the role that language plays in enabling and constraining what is thinkable, sayable, and doable. And it's about futures thinking, diffracting and transcending Western culture. And by diffraction, what I've got here is an image that I actually took the photo of light, diffractive light, and it was a glass of water on my sink on the windowsill, and the light shining through. And so this image is the diffracted light in my stainless steel sink. But it's about to show that diffraction is about seeing into reality, not just the taken for granted level that the Western culture has us constructing all the time. So futures thinking as futures intelligence diffracts old patterns of habitual thinking. So just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from here, my research is futures research. It's a post-disciplinary form of research and an open-ended form of inquiry. Futures research is always a learning journey, with the guide as the learner. Futures research is attentive to trends and it avoids used futures. And by used futures, I mean the orientation to repeat the same or similar unhelpful patterns from the past. So about internalising futures intelligence, well, my research has developed a theory and philosophy that cultivates ways of thinking and working that produce new, different, alternative or even preferred outcomes. So futures intelligence is an ethical form of entrepreneurial thinking that toggles between classical and quantum ways of imagining. And the definition that I put together in 2020 was futures intelligence as a relational, futures-oriented intelligence impelled to find positive value, to seek out opportunities to add value or enhance existing value, maximize or amplify value in socially embedded and socially responsive ways. And as internalizing futures intelligence enacts personal and professional development, futures intelligence over time becomes an approach to life. So it's internalized by employing two methodological tools, one being the entrepreneurial imagination and the second being the employment of intellectual virtue. So entrepreneurial imagining, and I take this term outside its masculinist and commercial context. As you can see, I've reinterpreted it in a much broader way. And it's ways of imagining that create a multiplier effect that result from life-loving thinking and acting. And here is the second methodological tool, which are the intellectual virtues, which in this presentation I'll only refer to the first three, which is curiosity, playfulness, and intellectual autonomy. So just to summarise futures intelligence, the goal of it is to increase intellectual autonomy by utilising the two methodological tools. And this is in order to diffract structural barriers. So futures intelligence is not about pushing boundaries. It's about crossing boundaries, recognising opportunities, increasing relational knowing and nurturing relationships. So now we've come to the part of the practical application for triple R women in our experience. So I'm drawing, of the three of these examples, two of them are what I've experienced. And so it's about mobilising multiple alternative non-compliant futures by guiding others. So as a guide, I'm a learner, a researcher and an educator, taking others on a learning journey using the methodological tools. And as I said, there's no end goal of being this when you come to the end of the journey. There is no end to it. It's about embracing the mysteriousness of self-transcendence. And yes, it's a form of collaborative learning. So a couple of examples of the projects that people have run that help develop and nurture futures intelligence. One is by Kerry-Ann Hammermister, and she ran a workshop, women's leadership workshop, where she encouraged women to move beyond stereotypical metaphors associated with leadership and help the women develop their own personal metaphor for leadership, which interestingly, most used nature metaphors. So that was really an interesting thing for me to see. Another project that Abdullah ran was about collaborative learning, where his students, he was introducing them to collaborative learning, and he used the methods, strategies and techniques that futures research provides. The other thing that I did was to become a board member, and I'm recommending this for Triple R women. Even if you're doing a PhD, it's still quite possible. And this is the organisation I've been associated with, and it gave me opportunities not only to use and exercise my own leadership, whether it's leading from the front or behind or in the middle, but it gave me the opportunity to encourage others' leaderships in different ways so that they could exercise influence. And as I said, the Futures Intelligence promotes a multiplier effect. Now, it's not a magical effect. It's something that just happens because you think differently. You start to think more broadly. And this is about being a member, not only on the board you're on, but being a representative member on other boards. And so that your influence and your information sharing can be carried across these different groups. Now, I'm not suggesting being a board member is easy, not at all. It's actually a very difficult gig, but this is where Futures Intelligence makes the difference, because you take it on as a learning journey and you use the methodological tools to interpret your own experience and produce new, different or alternative realities. And you can also encourage other people to think that way too. So the third example that I have is encouraging women to participate as well as they can in male-dominant industries, in the Triple R industries, which we know are all male-dominant, but using the intellectual virtues. For example, you can be playfully courageous. In Queensland last year, we have Beef Week every week, but last year the Triple R women ran high tea in one of the pavilions every day of the week. Another example was the Camerata Orchestra, who came and they played, they brought operatic artists with them, but they did it with a difference because they performed in akubra hats, flannel shirts and work boots. So this is about taking things out of their silos and cross-fertilising. So it's also about creating access where there is none. So just to sum this up, Futures Intelligence is about nurturing allies. It's about diffracting old patterns of thinking and working. It's becoming fearless. Thank you, everyone. And here's just a few references. If anybody is interested, I can send them to you.
That is fantastic. Right now, Cecily, you've changed lives here. Jane and I we're losing our mind here, Cecily. You'll see in the comments, you are the most popular person in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you for joining us in the middle of a cyclone, which is profound. And look, we are moving into a question period, colleagues, if you're comfortable. And I'm just making sure if you're on the call, I'm just checking if Bev's in. Can you just say hi, Bev, that you're with us?
I am here.
Oh, that's great, Bev. So I'm just checking. So you're obviously after the question time. I'm just checking you're here and you're looking glamorous as always. So look, colleagues, let's commence the question time. Look, Cecily, can I start with you and then we'll go to obviously the focus point that is the Palmerston North Library. But can I ask you a question, oh mate of mine? Now, you've talked about intellectual autonomy, and I love that as a phrase, but in a time such as this, and I'll use the T word, I'll use the Trump word, in a time of right-wing and left-wing libertarianism, how can you maintain intellectual autonomy considering so many forces are working against it, particularly with regard to deep and profound misogyny?
Wow, you asked me the big question, Tara.
Wow, worried. Worried.
Well, it's about personal and professional development. It's about your own way of thinking, and it's about staying with integrity in the knowledge that you know and can trust, and developing that and being true to that. And so encouraging yourself to think beyond systems, to not be caught up in political systems. So eventually what happens to you, you're actually sitting in a new space that can look at the world, and this is what trans-systemic thinking is about, that you think not within a system. That's why, so it's not about pushing boundaries, it's about crossing them. It's about thinking of them in the big picture and going, oh yes, and I can take this, this siloed area and this siloed area, and I can match them by using the intellectual virtues, which opens up your thinking and it keeps you ethically. And so this is the whole thing, that the intellectual virtues are absolutely integral to self-transcendence. Does that
that'll do, Cecily. You're like a sorbet for my brain. That is magnificent. I see Jane, you and I look at each other and go, oh my goodness me. Can we go to Palmerston North Library? We've got three fantastic, wonderful Harpreets. I've got so much to say about Harpreet as well, and Jane and Cecily. Let's go to the library first. Colleagues, any questions for our three speakers? Oh, yes, de-mute. Thank you, Joe. Hi, Tanya. Go, Greta. Lovely to see you. Good morning, my queen.
An observation is what's coming through is how people are the key from a feminist position, rather than all these models of, growth, making money, buying more stuff, making more stuff forever and ever.
Yeah.
And but how do you claim that space? I'm quite guilty of crossing boundaries and getting into a lot of trouble for it. So,
We love you for it, Greta. Look, wonderful Harpreet, could we go to you and then to Jane to talk about people-focused living rather than system or structures-focused living, neoliberalism, economic determinism. Harpreet, do you want to talk about, part of that is sustainable food production, but focusing on the people, the farmers themselves, rather than the systems and structures around them. Harpreet, do you want to talk to us?
Sorry, can you please repeat just a little bit?
Yes. So wonderful Greta talked about the importance of having a people-centered way of thinking about the world rather than top-down policies, economic determinism. So Harpreet, your great research on, I would call it food security and farmer-centric, I suppose, ontology. Do you want to talk a little bit about how agriculture changes when you listen and start with a farmer?
I think that's what is needed. Like from my field work, that's what was needed. Okay. So when I was talking to farmers, they're like, nobody come to us, and if they come, we don't feel like we are heard. What we tell, but if they can, because give an example of Punjab, especially, national government, center government, Modi government, they introduced farm bills. They introduced 3 farm bills without talking to farmers. The bills has some positive, some negative part. Consider context of Punjab. But if they have been talked to farmers, they would have been in place and giving the growth to India and to farmers. But because they were not involved, so there are a lot of protests. It was like more than 1 year of a protest at Delhi state, our capital, by farmers to not be in terms with what the laws are proposing. So yes, if that can be done, like farmer-centered, people-centered discussions, that can be easily done, what is needed for sustainable agriculture, even for any sustainable development goal, to be people-centric.
Oh, Harpreet, you've answered Greta's question brilliantly there. Could I go to Jane? And look, Jane, I'm going to put my hands on my heart here. As someone who's been really, really involved in, allied health and workplace development, universities in Australia have failed, Jane. We've absolutely failed to ensure a sustainable workforce, and we're living the churn. Is that because we haven't done what Greta said there to create a people-focused allied health protocol and workforce development?
I think it's a couple of things. So I think one of the things is when we think about our political structures and the power and privilege that sits, whether that's urban, metrocentric versus rural, remote, or whether it's professional groups, so the medical hierarchy, nursing, allied health, I think there's a whole lot of tensions there. And as I've been listening to Cecily speaking, I'm thinking about all those lines and how to, rather than trying to influence across the different pockets of power, how do we transcend them? How do we exercise what we know beyond that? I think the other thing too is we've got this real rhetoric in health where we talk about placing the patient at the centre or the community at the centre. But then we also find that really hard because professions have always been situated at the centre. And so no matter how hard we, how much we ideologically want to place our communities at the centre, it's really hard to park all of the things we've been told about ourselves and our professional identities. And I think here in Aotearoa, we've tried to do that where we've looked at locality models, working with iwi Māori partnership boards to develop health and social care systems that serve our communities. And I think what we're seeing currently is just how uncomfortable that is and how easy it is to step away from that under the guise of a change of government or a political ideological shift.
And Jane, do you think that discomfort is increased? That discomfort is increased because of the ill fit, the uncomfortableness that exists between a woman and a profession, because the professions were configured in a sexist, misogynistic, patriarchal framework. Women have never situated comfortably into a profession. So now in professions that are dominated by women in allied health, the fit still doesn't work. Is that part of the problem?
I'd probably have to give that some more thought. We certainly see in the professions that still have that are female dominated, we still see it's the few men that get to be in the leadership roles. I think about what Lethwe was talking about earlier on, like these still are those really really ingrained habits of thinking that we apply to what shape fits this. But yeah, I think I probably need to think about that some more. Thanks for the question, Tara.
No, that's strong, incredibly important, and you're doing incredible work. I've noticed, Jane, that Sita and Harpreet are about to have a big conversation. So Sita, do you want to enliven your microphone and your screen, and you have a chat with Harpreet, and Harpreet's going to talk back to you. So Sita, let's say hello. You've been my sort of friend through the last hour through the comments. Let's see you and have a chat, my darling. Can I find her?
I'm reading the question.
Hello, Sita. Or is she disappeared, Harpreet?
She's there. She's just on mute.
She's on mute. Oh, my darling, can you? Oh, hello, Sita. I've got you on my screen now. Hello. Good morning.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Harpreet, did you see my question on chat?
Just reading
But I
it
can
now.
say it again. Can you talk a little bit about how, in the aftermath of the Green Revolution, with its privileging of high input cash crops, and then the long tail of the consequences of that mode of production, how that might have impacted on the livelihoods of small farmers in Punjab? Whether there was anything that you could think through and respond to in relation to that set of shifts that have occurred in that region.
Yes, thank you for the question, Dr. Sita. And I actually want to first apologize to everyone. I thought that my screen slides are showing, but yeah, sorry for that.
You were brilliant. You are brilliant.
Yeah, and yes, so with that aftermath of the Green Revolution, actually it changed Punjab, like livelihood of small farmers, a lot. The time they introduced it with minimum support price. So now we are in that trap. Okay, so if we try to get out of that trap, because here we are growing wheat and rice. Okay, I know if I give you an example, with 1 acre, I know if I grow these 2 crops, that's a set payment I will get. If I have to go out of that crop, I will not get, it's on risk side. So, but with that increasing, I was having some payments, and it was good payment for the start, like after 1916, 1970, it was a good start. And the farmers, like livelihood, everything changed, their lifestyle changed, and their needs changed. They get into that luxury kind. But then it just stagnated. But that luxury impacted the life. With that, because our needs change and our thoughts change, so people are, there's so many layers with it. People are expected to continue living that lifestyle, but the income is stagnated, growth is stagnated. Now they can't. So to do that, they keep, on the soil level, on the land level, they keep putting more fertilizer to expect to grow more, but that can't be. There is a limit for that. But on the other side, to have that satisfaction with what the lifestyle they have got increase. That so there are second step going. Youth is migrating to foreign countries. So because they can't earn that much from the land now, which has raised their livelihood, so either they go boom down to the poor or to the foreign countries to get more income to satisfy the needs. So it's all very trapped, entangled in various situations.
So
Not
what
any-
you're saying is that the consequence is a gradual rural depopulation, with the younger demographics opting to leave that
Mhm.
mode of farming. Yeah.
Yeah. If I give like just little example of my own village, there were like many families, almost all of the village was doing farming and their younger generation. But now in my own village, only 2 families are doing farming. The whole land is on rent to those 2 particular families because all of us, like me, my husband, are sitting in foreign country. So as they are.
Yeah. Thank you
Yes.
for that.
That was amazing, wasn't it? Now, I could go on with questions. Have we got one more question? Susan, you've been sitting there terribly engaged and fabulous. Is there anything you'd like to ask of our 3 speakers, you superstar? Demute, Susan. Thank you. Can I help you?
I was just checking to see if you were talking to me. I was reading through some of the questions in the chat. I was interested in the West Coast medicine one because after I retired, I did some locums work over there. But I'm a specialist, so it was kind of different. Although there were a number of Americans that had moved over to the hospital in Greymouth, two female anesthetists and one general surgeon and her husband. I forgot, he's in, I think, internal medicine or something there too. So that was interesting. It's interesting to follow what's happening in medicine. I'm actually sitting over here in the US right now. But I've got some friends that I talked to through the New Zealand Women in Medicine group, and there's a lot of people really disenchanted with what's happening right now there. So, but yeah, I I've just sort of kind of followed these the bit on the agriculture in India. I thought was really, there you go, smile, was interesting. There's a lot going on here right now, so my mind is like totally messed up with what's happening in the US. It's mind-boggling and crap. But to that, New Zealand and Winston Peters was not so great either when he fired the guy in UK for disagreeing. But anyway,
And
yeah.
look, that's the challenge, isn't it, Susan? And look, I'll go to Leathwe, but Harpreet, the other interesting variable, we may not have time to talk about it, but to think about the role of tariffs in blocking globalization and the impact of tariffs on the Punjab in particular, I'm really interested in. But Leathwe, do you want to answer a much better question than that, or ask and answer? Go for it, my love.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question to Cecile regarding the last slide that she shared, because she said nurturing allies. And I want to check in terms of allies for women in the room. And also, Cecilia maybe can share how often or which gender do you think for women is mostly allies? Is it men or women? in your experiences, who often do you find as allies and mentors? Because from my experience, I've seen men coming through as more allies than women. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that question. What I've found is when I'm saying nurturing allies, people who are willing to think as learners, so not people as mentors. So the thing with futures intelligence, as you grow, you're taking people with you, but you're still learning at the same time. So it's a different understanding of allies. It's about people who are interested in developing transsystemic thinking, to be able to think across systems. And these methodological tools, the research I've done over a decade, has produced amazing results that have absolutely not just surprised me, but I've been absolutely my breath's been taken away with the changes in the people when you allow them and they self-realize. So you're all on a journey together. So these allies are not mentors. They're not people. This is non-hierarchical thinking. This is where it's a very different way of thinking to the subject-object way of thinking of the binary opposition thinking that we've all been socialized and educated into. So this is why it's a whole process of leaving that behind and working with people who are interested to develop this new way of thinking. And the people I've been working with have all kept developing it. Nobody said, oh, thanks, but no thanks. It's a bit too involved for me. So you don't take it on and think you're going to be changed overnight. It's a whole process of getting used to these using the intellectual virtues, recognizing, knowing your goal is to think outside of systems, not to be caught in them, not to be caught in a political system or in, the government systems, but being able to sit outside. So eventually, it doesn't happen overnight, but over many years, if you have faith in the process and if you've seen how it works. So I'm not sure if that answers the question about allies. So it's not about mentors and it's not about allies of people who are already ahead of you or whatever you think. It's non-hierarchical thinking and people who've been prepared to take on non-hierarchical thinking. And the thing with myself, because it's coming out of my own journey of coming out of a subject-object way of seeing the world. And so the thing is that you actually then can toggle between the new world that's coming and the classically defined world that has constructed all these binary constructions. And it's about recovering yourself because your original intelligence isn't androcentric. Your original intelligence, because the socialization and education processes, we internalize androcentric intelligence. We don't realize that's what we're doing. But that's exactly what we're doing. So it takes us back, if we recognize our original intelligence that we were born with is an embodied intelligence.
Beautiful.
And we can be true to the insights we had as children.
Yes.
And, we just recover that. We go back and think, well, actually, these are all the intellectual virtues, are childhood qualities, a lot of them. And you just recover them or don't lose them and just really bring them into play and have trust and accentuate them. And with practice, they become virtues. And these
Well said,
virtues
Cecily.
are actually your intellectual powers.
That's brilliant. So I think we're creating a brand new relationship here. That is a fantastic way of thinking about the world. And I'm going to be using toggle as a trope for the rest of my life, Cecily. So I thank you for that. Lethwe, you're still with us, about 1 a.m. in the morning, and she's still with us. And look, colleagues, let's move to our final hour. We're on the downward slope now, colleagues, and you're about to see a remarkable human being. So, Bev, if you'd like to share your screen, I'm going to introduce you now. So the legendary Bev Babbage, probably the most fabulous name any human could be born with. Now, currently, Bev is completing her PhD. She's focused her life on professional learning, on support to enable teachers to integrate technology into education, to teaching and to learning. And she's an international specialist in the use of iPads, not only in metropolitan environments, but particularly in regional, rural, and remote environments. I love Bev. Bev, good morning and welcome to your remarkable presentation, Women in STEM Roles and Research. Rock on, Bev.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Tara. Two
best.
things to start. One, I hope I get through this without coughing. I've got everything here to hoping. So if I go on mute, it'll be to save you hearing that. And the other is I'm also coming from the edges of Cyclone Alfred. So I've tried, if it gets really loud with rain or wind, I've tried to shut all the windows. So see how we go. Okay, so with the married surname of Babbage, perhaps I was always destined for a role with technology. Charles Babbage, photograph here, was an inventor and mathematician in the 19th century and is considered the pioneer of the modern computer. Babbage is my married name, and we have no idea if our family is related, but people have often commented that I have a fantastic name for my job, working with technology, and like Tara just said, apparently Bev Babbage has quite a ring to it. I live in regional New South Wales in Australia, on beautiful Gumbaynggirr land in Coffs Harbour. I was a stay-at-home mum for 16 years and loved every minute. While our two sons were in high school, and now they are both civil engineers, I returned to university and completed my studies remotely, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts Music. At the time, I had no intention of working and had always said if I went back to university, it would be for enjoyment, not employment. So I studied music and French. After volunteering at my son's school and always wanting to be a teacher when I was young, I then decided I would do my graduate diploma of education and train to become a secondary music teacher. I was already in my late 30s and embraced this new career with enthusiasm, which included an interest in teaching with technology. Smart boards were new, and I tried to be modern and cutting edge in my teaching practice. I was successful in securing 20 iPads for my classroom on a trial and enjoyed being innovative and creative. It was always important to me that iPads must have positive learning outcomes for students and not be used as babysitters. I became known for my passion for teaching with Apple technologies and supported other teachers and schools, starting my own business as a sole trader and delivering professional learning to teachers on creative ways to embed iPads and technology into teaching practice. As I live in regional New South Wales, I was aware of the challenges and costs of travelling to Sydney for professional learning and the limited options available regionally. So I focused on delivering workshops initially in regional New South Wales. For those of you overseas, it's one of the states of Australia. I was introduced to Apple education, and after meetings and observations, I was endorsed to present professional learning workshops on behalf of Apple as a consultant, and we're called Apple Professional Learning Specialists. Most of my initial work was creativity in music or art with iPad and developed into using creative cross-curricular apps that would work on all subjects at primary and secondary levels. I designed workshops to respond to the needs of teachers. I was always open to opportunities, and when someone suggested I visit Broken Hill, which is far west in New South Wales, I thought, sure, and I went there, which resulted in many visits over several years. Teachers in regional areas were always so grateful to have the professional learning come to them rather than having to travel. In the mid-2010s, the teaching of STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, and coding and robotics were becoming popular and later mandatory. And someone said to me that there would be a need for professional learning in coding and robotics. So I taught myself block coding with Scratch and robotics such as Firo and Lego and Dash and Dot. It was always, again, important to me that the crammed curriculums in schools, coding and robotics could be linked authentically with cross-curricular outcomes. Teachers were already so overworked. So I designed lesson plans and ideas to embed coding and robotics using iPads in teaching. My workshops were endorsed by BOSTES, which was the New South Wales Board of Studies, and later NESA, for registered professional learning hours for teachers, and I travelled around New South Wales. So many teachers were nervous about having to teach coding and STEM and robotics, and I was known for making it easy and relevant. Being a teacher meant that I knew how to break it down and teach not only students, but adults, and I was able to demystify ICT and digital technologies for many. Learning activities for teachers were fun, hands-on, and encouraged computational thinking and creative problem solving. And this goes back to one of the previous speakers, positioning the teacher as the learner. And often teachers are so used to being the teacher that suddenly when they are learning, they feel very threatened. I loved the challenge of the creative problem solving and never thought anything about my age or being female. I was just being responsive, seeing opportunities, and enjoyed the challenges and the travel. Running my own business, I created my own work and opportunities, but I also presented workshops and training for Apple. I extended into regional Queensland, the state further north from me, as there was a need, and visited some amazing places while I worked. This, of course, was in the days before so much training went online post-COVID. Following other opportunities and spreading further north to areas such as Alice Springs and Yalara, which for those of you, if you've heard of Uluru or Ayers Rock, is right in the centre of Australia in the Northern Territory, I was fortunate to start working with some First Nations organisations such as Indigenous Digital Excellence, followed by work for the first time in a remote Aboriginal community, very small in the middle of Australia in the Northern Territory. It was through this work and my connections that I was offered the role of Apple Professional Learning Specialist on a new pilot project with Apple, working with remote First Nations communities in Northeast Arnhem Land. Working in schools with teachers, both Yolngu, who are the traditional people, and Ballanda, non-Yolngu people, and students, I trained teachers on how to embed iPads into their teaching and learning programs, connecting with culture and First Nations languages. To do this, I had to take time, move at the speed of trust, and listen, being ever respectful of the importance of cultural protocols. The Yolngu people are fortunate to learn Yolngu Mata as their first language. The focuses became the creation of culturally appropriate digital resources in Yolngu Mata and upskilling the local Yolngu educators. This incredible experience led to great professional and personal growth. Through close collaborations and relationship building, I have learnt from and been guided by the wisdom of Yolngu elders, educators, and community members in how to teach their young people and how to best support them in teaching their language and culture in accordance with their aspirations for their children's futures. Following the learnings and successes of the Arnhem Land project, the project extended into the Kimberley region of Western Australia with Catholic education. These remote communities in the desert provided new learnings and challenges. Driving for many hours on dirt roads and later flying in charter planes due to the isolation and hundreds of kilometres we needed to travel each day, working with Jaru, Walmatjari and Gugajar languages, resources were adapted and created to suit their individual needs. Some of these languages are endangered or under threat. This work has been nothing short of life-changing and has led me to my current focus, iPads in First Nations education and languages. Over 6 years of working in Northeast Arnhem Land and the Kimberley region with remote and very remote Aboriginal communities, I have learnt so much and had some unique opportunities and insights. I have often felt that I have learnt more than I have taught. It's been absolutely incredible. Watching how remote Aboriginal students and teachers have embraced using iPad technology has been inspiring. And watching how quickly they learnt the skills made me wonder whether there are connections with traditional First Nations pedagogies, which is the PhD I am researching now. iPads as a multimodal tool to support Yolngu Mata language and traditional ways of learning, giving back to the communities that have helped welcome me so warmly. I am so fortunate to have the support of the Yolngu community in this research. I am navigating the academic world and honouring and acknowledging Indigenous methodologies, always guided by Yolngu ways of knowing, being and doing. Technology enables me to be able to study remotely through Charles Darwin University from my regional home. Whilst there are barriers to regional and remote living, some of these barriers are being gradually dismantled with internet connectivity and flexible learning and study options. There is still progress to be made, especially for many of the very remote communities I visit. But satellite technologies are now opening up some regional and remote communities to the online world for the first time. Now, the reason I gave you this graphic is I can actually trace back to every step or fork in the road that led me to where I am now. But at the time, I had no idea that they were going to lead me to where I am. I've always been open to new challenges and learnings, and I've had a never say no mentality, take a calculated risk. As I near my 56th birthday, I don't think about age as relevant, thank you, Tara, to my role. I am an educator, a teacher, and I teach. Now I teach how to use technology in education with remote Aboriginal communities. A few years ago, I met with a teacher for the first time in a very remote school. She was older than me and resistant to using technology in the classroom. I walked into the classroom, and when she looked up and saw me, she said, "Thank God you're old." I could have taken offense, and maybe I did a little, but I knew where she was coming from. At a certain age, she felt threatened, nervous, or intimidated, learning from a young person who may be judging her for her lack of digital abilities. She was relieved that she was learning from a woman closer to her age who might understand her needs and judge less. But as I now embrace being a grandmother, there is this. In 2019, on one of my visits to Northeast Arnhem Land, I was lucky enough to meet some people from NASA, there for the upcoming launch of a rocket. I met Susan Finley, the longest serving woman in NASA. She began working in 1958 at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory with unmanned rockets, working as a human computer, similar to those inspiring women in the movie Hidden Figures, who worked as human computers on manned rockets. Wow. Susan is mentioned in the book Rise of the Rocket Girls. She had worked at NASA for over 60 years when I met her and was in her late 80s. Absolutely incredible. The percentage of females in STEM employment and education is low. However, there are currently 51 Apple professional learning specialists, such as myself, in Australia and New Zealand, and 32 are women, 62%. Now, it could be, somebody was talking earlier about teachers also being, but there's more women in teaching. Maybe that's where it's come from, but it's interesting to know we're still in a STEM role. Why should it be surprising that there are women in STEM or STEAM roles? I know when we all get together annually for our summit, we love finding our tribe. And here are just some of my tribe. Inspirational women of all ages in urban and regional areas across Australia and New Zealand. Teachers and educators, Apple professional learning specialists, leadership, and Apple. And now, as I study for my PhD, I have no idea where it will lead, but I am excited by the possibilities. And now I'm an early career researcher, I'm back again as the learner. Women are underrepresented in academia also, but I look to the many strong women who've come before me, finding my new tribe. This is not to say I don't also have some fabulous supportive men in my tribe, not the least of which is my ever supportive husband, but today is about celebrating women, the sisterhood. Some of my friends lovingly call me a geek or nerd, but when I'm with my peers, we are all alike, and everyone needs to find their tribe or their sisterhood with other colleagues that they can relate to and who relate to you. Learn from each other. Online forums, either through universities, professional learning, or other avenues, are critical to finding a support network, particularly for those in regional and remote areas. I have found these incredibly helpful as a regional researcher, helping to overcome the isolation that can happen when you spend hours each day at a computer, immersed in your own world, and can feel that you're not alone when you know there are others around. In fact, I met the inspirational Tara through one of these very forums that she facilitated. I close with a photo from Yirrkala in Northeast Arnhem Land, a mural of another strong woman, Dr. Marika, a trailblazer for bilingual education and an inspiration. And that's where I will finish it. Thank you.
Bev, you are absolutely amazing. I'm only just holding it together. You managed a cyclone, you managed a throat, and you've changed our lives. There's so much we're going to talk about. We'll get to if we can hold you for question time. I would love to. But can I just say, colleagues, the speed of trust. That phrase is going to change my life. The speed of trust. You're amazing, Bev. Thank you for that. I just love you forever. You know that. You changed my life. Colleagues,
Thanks,
oh, you're amazing. Let's move to the legendary AJ. So Alison Jane Hunter. AJ, please feel free to share your screen if you'd like to, or speak straight to us. But can I say AJ is currently enrolled in her second doctorate, having recently completed her novel that she's just sent off to publishers, and an exegetical component as well. AJ is joining us deep in the night in the United Kingdom. She is a great blessing to us. She's not only an astonishing writer, she's also simply the greatest teacher I've ever had the pleasure to meet. And she speaks to us today about the gift and the challenges of regional education. So AJ is going to speak to us round the title, Regional Teaching and Learning, with a particular focus on cultural capital. AJ, all yours, my darling.
Thank you. I think I will just talk to you. I think that's more straightforward. So I have recently, last couple of years, moved into regional teaching, and I have spent all this time trying to work out how I can truly connect with my students and how I can support them and release their innate brilliance. So in Australia, teaching and learning in a regional setting are vastly different from a metro area, which is what I'm used to. Much of this stems from the geospatial reality of Australia's size, which can lead to social, political, and economic isolation. The complexities are often covert and frequently presented in a simplified way, such as teaching to a fashionable strand of the pastoral care curriculum. This undermines both the individuality of students and the pedagogical purpose of such adjustments. Teaching to one strand of a cohort, for example, rather than to a divergency of active learners, or teaching metro ideas of cultural capital and how they define student groups in terms of class, is both patronising and infantilising for a differently sophisticated cohort. Where Bourdieu contends that cultural capital is class dependent, perpetuating socioeconomic inequality in a more socioeconomically flattened regional society where high financial rewards are available for skilled and semi-skilled physical work as much as for highly educated conceptual work. A more sophisticated reading of the pedagogical requirements of each cohort is needed. So consideration of how to lift cultural capital amongst regional young people, thereby raising the status and outcomes of secondary schooling in particular, is necessary from a moral as well as an economic standpoint. After all, if young people cannot see themselves and their lives reflected in the concepts and tasks presented, they will legitimately reject the thinking and likely outcomes as irrelevant. This thinking is crucial because it lies in the realms of hearts and minds, rather than mandates and punishments. Furthermore, and specifically, if young women, and I actively include all LGBTQIA+ women in this term, cannot see themselves within the proposed teaching and learning because their social expectations are more governed by oppressive traditional values than those of their male peers, then educators have a massive problem of lack of aspiration that's gendered as well as intergenerational to solve. A practical and relevant definition of cultural capital can be found in Swidler and Farkas's assessment of the need for an adaptive set of cognitive skills, encompassing literacy, shared conceptual, cultural, and historical knowledges, mathematical and analytical reasoning, paired with an adaptive set of behavioral skills encompassing achievement motivation, self-regulation, and delay of gratification, the old marshmallow test. Both approaches to teaching and learning are highly associated with academic and occupational success. An examination of these adaptive foundational skills suggests that this approach would make sense in a regional town founded on, say, heavy industry. Such a town's fortunes and those of its inhabitants are very reliant on specific industries, often only one in each town, and the work generated. Whilst agricultural, creative, health, education and retail work are available in most regional areas, the primary foci for the towns often lie in heavy industry, such as mining, frequently with a large tranche of what Tara talked about, highly mobile FIFO workforce. The mining industry is a dominant employer in regional towns, potentially bringing regeneration as it draws in outsiders to regional centres for work. The risk is where heavy industry dominates the town's fortunes to such an extent that the town is reliant on industry rather than having industry reliant on the town. As such, the balance of power can dispossess regional centres and undermine the hopes and dreams of those who live there long term. So in the last census, which was in 2021, of a sample regional town, we can see clearly that work is available and that it's possible to have only one parent in full-time paid work and the other in unpaid work, supporting traditional gender roles. The percentages of people working as technicians and trade workers at 17.4% and machinery operators and drivers, 15.2%, far outnumber South Australian and Australia-wide percentages, with lower percentages for all other types of work, including professionals. To reinforce this image, iron smelting and steel manufacturing in this sample town employ 12.8% of the population, where the numbers are 0.3 and 0.2 for South Australia and Australia as a whole. Whilst at the top echelons, engineers require a wide range of innovative, creative and technical skills, that becomes less true in specialised semi-skilled work such as train driving, which is far more automated. Nonetheless, the supporting infrastructure of train drivers, labourers, furnace operators and so forth have access to significant remuneration without necessarily requiring innovative skills, and this skews the perceived learning needs of young people. These then are the key career pathways young people can see if they stay in their hometown with their own extended familial networks. In order to achieve these work-based pathways, there are often two key tertiary training providers. So in the area I'm in, UniSA, soon to be part of the merged Adelaide University, and TAFE. Obviously, other RTOs provide technical and vocational training as well. In 2025, courses available at regional centres of UniSA include early childhood education, primary education, secondary education, social work, ageing and disability, human services, nursing, midwifery, physiotherapy and occupational therapy. Whilst these courses align with the professional needs of regional towns, it's concerning to note how limited the range of courses is. Whilst other courses such as creative writing, humanities and sciences can be accessed online, with Flinders University currently offering 20% discount on all online courses, the experience of university life is very constrained unless young people are willing to leave regional towns and study in capital cities, either locally or interstate. Accommodation is often available for students in the capital cities, but young people may be placed in an unfamiliar melting pot if they make this choice, often removed from their families and communities. Unlike British young people who largely expect to move location to go to university, South Australian students expect to study locally as a result of expat funding models. Alongside the UniSA offering, TAFE has mirroring courses, with the exception of its applied engineering courses, age and disability services, children's education and care, civil, structural and mechanical engineering, electrical and renewable energy, and then, interestingly, hairdressing, hospitality, literacy and numeracy, manufacturing and welding, and short courses in aged and disability services, first aid and hospitality. Although the regional tertiary training providers are open and welcoming, teaching staff may be less active in the research field, as the accessible pay rates reflect the way that direction and research come from the city. Tertiary teaching can be more dissemination of city-based information than taught by a local researcher. Finally, admission grades may well be lower for regional universities, reflecting the patronising view that less should be expected from regional students. If the jobs available determine career choices and expectations, These choices are more narrowly defined again by decisions taken about the quality, cultural capital and expectations of regional secondary students. Families may accept that the more accessible options as a result of their experience of the jobs overtly available. How can these expectations be expanded without an implied deficit model being applied? Surely, negotiations must be careful, delivered over time, and follow a transparent, explicit model that values and aligns with the positive local cultural capital of the region without imposing unfamiliar values and negative assumptions. One of the ways of giving students greater levels of choice through cultural capital is to build onto the Australian curriculum, R10 version 9, and SACE 2025, which is for year 11 and 12. These are for the general capabilities. These are fundamental to both curricula, yet often downplayed in the face of pressures from subject content. The 7 SACE general capabilities reflect and develop the Australian curriculum general capabilities. Literacy, numeracy, information and communication technology, critical and creative thinking, personal and social capability, ethical understanding and intercultural understanding. These theoretically taught since reception mirror the adaptive cognitive cultural capabilities above, but without the theoretical foundations being made explicit. Hence, it's arguable that what they require is to be made more visible, not less, and to be connected to the adaptive behavioural skills that will lift desire into outcome, hope into concrete pathways to success. There are scopes and sequences that could be used as vehicles for making these learnings far more explicit and valued through review or topic progression and even low-stakes formative testing processes. In the junior and middle years, this could be foregrounded through extant lines such as well-being and pastoral care. There is historical evidence that bringing in overarching curricula such as learning to learn or child protection and so forth can be foregrounded successfully through these flexible lines. What's necessary is research into the purposes and uses of such lines and their impact on student development over time. In the senior years, this could perhaps and even perhaps should be emphasised and reinforced through lines such as EAF or AIF, which it used to be research project, and individual studies for particular subject areas. If taught effectively, each adaptive cognitive and behavioural skill should be identifiable by students and utilisable for methodology sections of any research and or passion project, such as the AIF in stage 2. In regional schools, this teaching can also be affected strongly by the type and experiences of staff members. Regional schools have disproportionate numbers of early careers, special authority to teach, and overseas trained staff. This should be made, and frequently is, a huge advantage through effective in-house training. After all, it's often the outsider who can observe fresh opportunities and nuances simply by asking the crucial question, why, when presented with social majority norms. This is invigorating for otherwise stable societies. If those who've always worked within a regional setting focus on this question and make cognitive and behavioural adaptations alongside the outsiders to the system, then clarity, engagement and dynamism should ensue to the betterment of all stakeholders in ways that are appropriate and enriching to the local community. To me, one of the key areas not yet fully explored for inculcating dynamic aspirations based on cultural and scientific knowledges is careers education. I'm therefore going to propose a structured tinkering model and other forms of educational research design that foreground careers education as a mechanism for delivery of cultural understandings. The research design could then be aligned with the two key moral values established earlier, A, respect for prior knowledge, however divergent, and B, a refusal to impose hierarchical values on choices, as it's right and sufficient that a range of choices is truly available and accessible to each student, regardless of traditional approaches to expectations. Using a range of clear, inclusive definitions is an obvious starting point for implementing explicit cultural capital innovations and strategies at a whole school level. Given that the capabilities are mandated, this should be a process revision and renewal rather than new work. These definitions, co-constructed with former and current students, can then be tinkered with for appropriacy to year groups and individual year levels according to the student's cognitive understandings, that is, differentiated according to learning readiness. Second stage is to trace or cross-map the agreed patterns of cultural capital learning across the extant curriculum, highlighting where concepts are taught already through a series of checks, for example, via daily review, and low-stakes testing, e.g. through Kahoot or similar, in, for example, careers or pastoral care settings. This process should be very reassuring as cultural capital is uncovered and highlighted, with ownership equitably shared across all stakeholders. Step 3 is to monitor the impact of the now explicit teaching and learning of cultural capital and its concomitant dynamic skills and aspirations. It should be evident in accessible patterns such as career choices, independent study choices, and pastoral care support, where it can be built into resilience and other PBIS or whatever types of strategies that also seek to engage the whole child. In this way, teaching, learning, monitoring, and evaluation are easy additions to the work already taking place in regional schools, adding to key data sets rather than either being imposed or even detracting from the valuable work already being undertaken. Once monitoring has happened, celebration is easy to generate and establish. In the past, I've used poster campaigns, social media recognition, and so forth for those showing the adaptive cognitive and behavioural skills needed for aspiration and success. I strongly recommend allowing former and current students' voices to be clear and forward-facing in regional communities in particular. Students need role models that they recognise as familiar. So seeing and celebrating success of their own local peers and community will always have a greater impact than the objective statistics schools are required to generate for external agencies, crucial as these can be to funding and national measurements of targets and goals. Those who've engaged in these celebrations are the obvious leaders of the next wave of the revolution. Schools need to trust that they've taught their students great skills and allow them to guide and support the younger students. Such systems of peer mentoring are widely available and have huge benefits, including vivifying programs and taking time pressure off teachers. Finally, I would argue that all such programs must be living programs and therefore subject to review. We need to build on success, not failure, so that all program design is inherently positive, comprehensive, research-driven, as well as morally, culturally, and diversity inclusive. Thank you.
Oh, AJ, that was tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. And the notion that you started with the tinkering of the tropes and finishing off with let's render this a living program. We're going to return there, AJ, right from the middle of the night in the United Kingdom. You are amazing. Thank you, my angel. And look, we're now moving from the United Kingdom to the wonderful Indonesia with Dr. Wipsardina Triandari. So hello, please share your screen. I'm so excited to see you. Now, this wonderful human being completed her PhD last year, and she has this passionate commitment to the building of strategic partnerships, particularly in disaster management, which is so appropriate for the planet right now. So Wipsa is changing the world, and she's joining us from Indonesia unbelievably early in the morning. So selamat pagi, my darling. And she's exploring understanding women's motivation through the participation in disaster resilient villages. Wonderful. Wipsa, all yours, my darling. So wonderful to see you once more.
Thank you very much, Tara, for the opportunity. It's really a huge honor for me to be sharing this session with amazing speakers. A little bit about myself. Yes, Tara came into my supervisory team and became my principal supervisor when I was in the brink of a disaster myself, because I thought I would have to ask for extension, but she gave encouragement that I could finish in 6 months. So we me and my panel of supervisor worked so hard, and we finally managed to squeeze the thesis on time on the last date, and I then completed it. So so that's where I met Tara, and she's such a wonderful and insightful mentor for me. So thank you again, Tara. I'm currently now the policy development advisor for the Australian-Indonesian Partnership on Disaster Risk Management, helping the National Disaster Management Agency in Indonesia to develop a disaster logistic plan that would help them ease with preparedness stage, preparing all the disaster logistic and equipment needed when a disaster strike. So my presentation it's not actually the part of my thesis, because my thesis investigated factors that influence the sustainability of disaster resilient villages. This is appeared in my coding process. I used grounded theory for this, and it inspired me very much to finish my thesis, because the motivation that the participant or the member of the disaster resilient village humbled me so much that I would like to share my experience to also a larger audience, which probably could seek some inspiration also from them. So an introduction about Indonesia, according to World Bank, is ranked as an upper middle country. And it's the biggest Muslim country in the world, with 80% of its population is embracing Islam. But I'm also a Muslim too, and in my interaction, particularly with Western colleague, I often see the stereotyping of Muslim women. These are the question that I get a lot when we exchange and when we discuss. Some questions like, Indonesian women must be oppressed because they have to cover themselves. In Islam, a lot wear hijab, so people were always asking, "Are you forced to wear like a covering material on yourselves?" And then Indonesian is known for its patriarchy. No, women must submit to their husband. This is true because this is like the culture in Indonesia, where in some part of Indonesia, I think I can't speak about the whole nation, but in my location in Java, when we have, or when we go into a marriage, then usually we then regard us our husband more than us. And then some simple question like, do you really have to ask for permission when you go out of the house, your house? Those kind of questions are often asked. And I would like to probably shed some light with these experience of the women of the Kampung Siaga Bencana, or disaster resilient villages. So my introduction to KSB, I was working for the United Nations World Food Program, where they asked me to be the lead researcher for evaluating the Ministry of Social Affairs program, which is called Disaster Resilient Villages. These are the villages that will be the frontliners when a disaster comes. So it should be self-sufficient, although it was established by the government. But it's interesting to understand what motivate these villages to keep on working, keep on protecting their community from disasters. So that was my topic, thesis topic. And then about Disaster Resilient Village or Kampung Siaga Bencana, a bit about that. It's one of the Ministry of Social Affairs flagship program. It usually consists of 30 until 50 people residing in the same area. And currently there are more than 900 KSB established across Indonesia. So when I meet these women, they often tell me what motivate them to be a member of the Disaster Resilient Village or KSB, because they are self-sufficient. They're not funded. They don't receive salary, but they would have to go to the front line and risk their life, risk their family. Like I said, family is very huge in Indonesia, so usually it's our number one priority. But I meet these women every time I go and do my research, and their experience just amazed me, because I was up there with the United Nations, with the government, but then I saw these people that are content with what they do, although it risks their lives. So they tell me why. Um, uh, I'm not analyzing this from a gender perspective, because I am no gender expert, but this is what I found throughout my field research. So people say women, they belong in the kitchen, but for these women that I meet, they're the frontliners and in disaster and crisis. So there was one woman I met in Central Java, and she was not only a member of the disaster resilient village, but a Tagana. Tagana is the one that also provide quick life-saving services to the villagers. And she said she saved a driver from a bus crash. When there was an accident, we did not know that there was an accident, but the driver was stuck in the steering wheels. The place was surrounded by men, but I went inside and helped. The police did not stop me, or the other men did not stop me because they know that she was helping. When I was helping carrying out the driver, somebody documented it and it went viral in the internet. So it was in YouTube when she was performing that. And she was a very fit young lady, also wearing a hijab, but it did not uh, be a challenge for her, or it did not block her path to do what she wants, helping people in crises. And then another story, one of the KSB in East Java, where women make up 60% of the KSB membership. So disaster is usually traditionally men's work, bread and butter. Like myself in disaster logistic policies, I think I'm the only one that is doing this currently. So not a lot of KSB has women as their member, but there is one KSB. I think there are few though that women make up more than half of the membership, and this was very welcome by the community. Like one KSB leader in that area, he said it with an affectionate tone, that he said, "These ladies, ma'am, they're bringing pots, pans, everything they have from their houses. They bring and these are rural women that do not have much. In Indonesia, I think I read that the salary the monthly salary is around 200 Australian dollars. So they don't have much, but they bring all what they have in their houses to open a public kitchen. So opening a public kitchen is one of the core role of the disaster resilient villages. They bring salted fish, eggs, rice from their homes, and then they will look for a dry place. They will set a tent and they will start cooking immediately. So they are the core of the community, and people are often seeing them as their rescuers when a disaster happens. And then I met Women in Leadership. In Yogyakarta, there was a KSB that had a conflict because the old management was forced to reshuffle and then to be changed by a new management. But then the head of villages that was newly elected, she was a woman, and her name was Miss Annie. She had a background of law, and when she saw what happened in this KSB, she took her own initiative and said, "Nope, the old management still have a legal standing. I will not push them away, but instead I will reinstate them." And this actually brought unity in the KSB. This KSB that was being passive and not responding to the disaster. I think flood occurs frequently there. They came together as she managed to give motivation to the member of the KSB. One member said, "Our spirit returned because of Miss Annie and her persistence to, come on, let's try again. We know we're prone to disaster, so we have to revive our community to help each other." And this touched everybody. And when I came there and visited the KSB, they are now active, even posting their day activities in Instagram and YouTube also. And then balancing between housework and social work, because yes, in Indonesia, housework for women, housework is considered prioritized, particularly in the rural area. So, but when I met, not only in one KSP, but instead, I think nearly all that they say, "I'm only a housewife. I don't have money to help. So how could I help?" So I could help. And I want to learn. I want to learn from others. So that's why I became a KSB member. Being a housewife doesn't stop me or doesn't make me idle, but I could contribute with my mind, with my activities, and I want to be useful for others. And then, but how about her husband, her kids? Would she be neglecting her family? And she said, "Well, my husband fully supports me. So he even drops me to the disaster site himself." They have a regular rotational shift. It depends on the disaster, but the disaster could run like months or even years. So they would have how many nights in the disaster shelter, and then they would go home and rotate every often. And she said that I come home one night and then the next day I have to go to the temporary shelter. Like that until 1 month. House chores, my husband does all that with the help of my eldest daughter. So she was also an elderly woman wearing a hijab, and she's in her 60s. And until now, I believe she is still one of the core members of the KSB. And what I see throughout my research is like they are very happy to share their stories and very willingly to share with a stranger. So when they tell it with happiness, I also feel happy inside, and this gives me the motivation to also wanting to finish my thesis because of them. Another story. In Indonesia, women are the primary care of her children. So there was a story also in Yogyakarta when they held a jamboree for the KSB or Disaster Resilient Village. Miss Rini, she had a daughter that had to go to the ICU, and her husband called her, and she was at the jamboree at the time. And she was very saddened, but she did not know what to do. But my husband kept convincing me that I should finish. So they held the prayers in the jamboree site. For her daughter to recover. And after the jamboree, they directly go to the hospital. At the end, Miss Rainey's team, which consisted of mostly women, then went on championing the setting up the tent competition. So in the Jamboree, there are skill-based competition, and setting up a huge family tent that could cover like 10 people at once is very hard and laborious work. But the one that took the first winner was Miss Rainey's team, and they are all women. So that was mind-blowing for me at that time. And then Miss Rainey herself then went on to be elected to be the head of village. Balancing between family and social work. So it's not only the wives, but also daughters in Indonesia. They would need parents' permission if they leave the house. And I asked this, you're very young. I think she was 21. Does your husband or your parents allow you to do these kind of things? You will be in the disaster site, and you will be far from your family. And she said, I'm single, ma'am, but I like what I do. I often go to disaster areas. And when I go home, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, my parents are okay. They give me permission because they know that I'm helping people out.
Whoopsie, my darling, can we start to finish it up now? Thank you, my darling.
So I think this is the two last slide. It's about men and women working together. So I asked, do you women only do the cooking and the men do the life saving? And they said, no, of course not. We do what we can do. So basically for us, we help each other, and the men are willing to grind the spices. The women will do the same. So the most important thing is that we respect each other. In the people roles correspond with the skill that they have. And then this is also the motivation that I found across the KSBs, is that they surrender their life to God. As I mentioned before, they only earn like 200 Australian dollars each month. So if they have to go to disaster site, or if they have to go to meetings, they cannot work for the day. But then I asked, why would you do that? You're losing money. How will you look for money? And a lot of them said, I don't work for one day, but I believe God will provide. Money can come from anywhere for me. Basically for social cause, God willing, God will repay us in another way. So they feel that they're doing a good thing, they're helping, and then they understand that at the end of the day, if it's not in here, but in the next life, in the eternity, they will reap what they sow. So I'm closing my presentation here. Firstly, it's for me, because I'm not I'm not a gender expert. The true essence of feminism is not define what others may perceive or stereotypes. It's about courage, determination, and the willingness to make difference, whether it's rescuing victims, providing care, and for women, they stand as an inspiration for strength, resilience, and the power of solidarity. And because of this woman, also, I argue that I could finish my PhD. So thank you very much.
Whoopsie, you are amazing. Wow. Can we just all acknowledge that the power of the courage and the intervention, and to behave in ways that are outside of normative stories and parameters? That was just astonishing, my love. I'm so glad you've joined us from very early morning Indonesia. We're thrilled to see you. And colleagues, we've only got 2 little bits left. And I'm just going to change the view a little bit to, if I can, multi-speaker. So I'm about to talk to the legendary Eunice. I see Eunice wearing crisp white once more. So Eunice, do you want to say hello to everybody? And you and I are just going to have a chat. How are you going, Eunice?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. This has just been amazing. Absolutely inspirational listening to all these speakers around the world.
Well, we are thrilled to see you. We may see Adam on the way through or not, but I'd just like to talk a little bit with Eunice if I can, because like so many inspirational women, Eunice is a nurse, respect, and she's a 40+ year nurse and is currently an expert witness nurse providing independent opinions for courts around Australia. But she also holds a PhD from Flinders University exploring disabilities in particular and congenital abnormalities. And she passed that thesis, can I say, without correction. But Eunice, I did want your voice today, if I could. What did draw you to starting a PhD from a nursing background, and particularly the focus on disability and impairment?
I think really it all started through a feeling of frustration more than anything else. Because from a clinical perspective, we see things, we see patients when they come in, we see families, and we're very much problem solvers as nurses. And we see a problem, we know what needs to be done, and we get on with it and we fix it and merrily send them home. But we have no idea what an impact whatever we've sent them home with has on their lives. And this obviously became real to me when our own son, Adam, was born. He's now 35, God love him. And he was born with Down syndrome and Hirschsprung's disease. And that's one of the two conditions that are a rare congenital abnormality of the bowel that babies are born with. Most people have never heard of them. All of these conditions are named, after Dr. Hirschsprung's, there's never a Dr. Smith or Jones or anything like that. So they're weird conditions that no one's ever heard of. And the sad thing about them is they're not detectable before birth. And that is a real problem. Wow. And even now, 35 years later, we still have no means of detecting Hirschsprung's disease before birth because it's a disease of the bowel. It's where there's a lack of nerve supply to the large bowel from the anus back to a certain point. In some babies, that can encompass the entire gastrointestinal tract, in which case it's extremely rare to be compatible with life. But in most children, it's part of the large bowel. And what happens is you think of a large tube from mouth to anus. There's a blockage at the bottom. That's what they're born with, a bowel obstruction. You start feeding them at the top. That's when you start to realize, hang on, something's going on here. There's nothing coming out the bottom end or very little, and their tummy swells up. And clearly there's indications. As a nurse, you realize something is going on here that shouldn't be. And of course, millions of tests later reveals that it is in fact Hirschsprung's disease. And I think what I found most frustrating was we had no idea as nurses what it was like when people go home with these children. And what I found was the many nights in hospital with Adam. He spent probably the first 6 years of his life in and out of hospital. And during that time, it's quite lonely and you get to speak to other mothers. And some of the other mothers I spoke to, I realized, wow, I'm coming at it from a nursing perspective, which in some ways was a blessing and a curse because it's very difficult to separate those two roles when it's your own child. I looked after these children. My background was theatre nursing, so I knew the operations. I knew all the practical side of it. But what I didn't know was what it felt like when it's your baby coming out of theatre, having had major surgery at a few days of age. And I thought, if I am finding this difficult to navigate as a nurse who understands all of that side, then what about all the mothers and fathers who have no experience with the medical arena, don't know how things work, who to contact, all that sort of thing? And slowly but surely, I met other mothers who, there was one particular nurse who was very interested in this condition and helped look after us. She was very keen on spreading the word, helping other people. But I also found there was another mother who had the same surname as us, amazingly. Her little girl also began with the letter A, and people often confused us when we were coming into hospital. And they'd say, oh, it's Adam, it's not Amy. I wanted to know who this other person was. Turned out she was an ICU nurse. We got together, the three of us, and we decided to start just a little mothers group to help other people. Well, that little mothers group turned into a fully fledged support group and registered charity. And it had been going up until last year. We actually closed it down last year simply because the internet has taken over. People can find information online. But what I found through all those years and the privilege of talking to all those families and my own experience was their voices just weren't heard from the other side of the fence. They weren't heard from the medical arena or the nursing arena. We understood the problems and what needed to be done, but we didn't understand how we could support them. And that's why I think, work such as the social work arena we've heard about today, lots of other support services is so important. So many times I heard the same story over and over again. I didn't know there was anybody else out there with these conditions. It's so good to talk to somebody because we can't talk to our friends. These children, some of them go through life and they're perfectly fine after the surgery. But a lot of people in the community, of course, don't understand. They've had that, they think, well, it can't be anything to do with what they're born with because they had the surgery and it was fixed. Well, we stopped using the word fixed a very long time ago. As you know, even as recently as just last week, Adam, who's now 35, we had to call an ambulance and he was taken into hospital.
Oh, Eunice. But I think, again, you're an inspirational woman. I don't know if you can see, I'm getting quite teary, everyone looking at you, and we're holding on to every word you've said. Can I move you forward now to, you then decided to complete a PhD on this particular disability and impairment, and you also completed that PhD at a distance. So how did you manage that clustering effect?
Oh, look, for me, it was just the gem that I needed. And because we live in a semi-rural community, when I first started my PhD in 2009, and it was very difficult to find a supervisor that was interested in what I wanted to write about. And that went on for many years. But my experience then was driving over 3 hours for each meeting, which might have lasted about half an hour. That was such wasted time that could have been spent researching, writing, actually getting on with it. Excuse me, my voice is croaky this morning.
Doing well.
What I found when I'm just so blessed that I was able to connect with you and Jamie to do, you fob it off, but honestly, if it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have happened. It took 14 years, but eventually I realized things weren't working. It was being pushed more as a medical model, and that's not what I wanted. I really wanted more of the social model and what happened to people. So when you agreed to take me on, what surprised me was I didn't have to stay within the field of nursing and medicine. You don't have, excuse me, you don't have that background. And yet you taught me more in 6 months of taking me on. We completely rewrote the PhD and it was done. And it was done because of your diligence of weekly meetings, half an hour. They were on the dot every Tuesday morning, 9 to 9:30. I knew exactly what I was doing. You always read whatever I sent to you. You sent it back, and it kept me on the ball to get this thing finished.
That's amazing, Eunice. I mean, again, giving me way too much credit. I'm just a random, and you're a truly brilliant human being. But can I ask the question that probably everybody who is watching you and is so incredibly moved, my sort of final question for you is, how did you manage doing a PhD, having a working life and career, having a fantastic family and a gorgeous husband, but with the caring responsibilities and completing a PhD? How did you bind that all together, Eunice? Teach us.
I think it comes from the support network around you. You know, I mean, my husband just took over the role of whatever needed to be done. He always has done. When Adam was born, our girls were 2, 4, and 6. So life was hectic, to say the least. But I guess you just get on with it. If it's something you're passionate about, something you really want to do, then you will find the time to do it. But you've got to have the right people supporting you. Otherwise, you're treading alone, and that's no place to be.
Now, Eunice, we're currently working on this thesis becoming a book which will change people's lives. But can I say I mean, as someone who's been a dean for much of the last decade, the 2 best PhD examiner reports I ever read were in response to this remarkable thesis.
I was just
transcendent. So this remarkable woman has changed knowledge, changed how we think about impairment and disability and families, but also changed how we think about doctorates. Eunice, I thank you for being you. You will have changed some people's lives today.
Thank you so much, Tara, for the opportunity.
Oh, you are the best. And of course,
Jamie.
Oh, you're amazing. And Eunice, will come back to you, obviously, but we're now moving to our last little bit of the gig today, colleagues. I thank you, Eunice. We're moving to the wonderful Josephine Jo Poland. Now, again, I met Jo through this experience of sort of getting this session going today. And I wanted to finish this session today, if possible, and then Jo came into my life talking about rural and regional literacy. Jo is the manager of Rural Youth and Adult Literacy Trust, changing the lives of thousands of people and their families. So can I say a big hello to Jo? Do you want to say hello to everyone, Jo?
Hi, everyone.
You start. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit tired. I had to get up early today.
Yeah, blame the random in your life. But can I say, Jo, I'm so thrilled you're here. And of course, you live in the legendary Port Waikato. Population, last time I checked, just under 600 people. So from this location, you are creating a transformative service for the nation. Could you tell us a little bit about your Rural Youth and Adult Literacy Trust, mate?
Okay, right. Well, I have some notes here. So if my eyes do weird things, it's because one of my greatest skills is waffling, and I decided if I at least have notes, I will stick to what I should be sticking to.
You're a dream.
It's a non-profit. It's working with teenagers and adults anywhere in New Zealand if they can't get to an urban adult literacy centre. We started off working only with adults, but so many of our adult students would come to us when they were young parents, and they'd say, I wish I had this years ago. So we decided to, instead of being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, although just a different ambulance probably, we would start working with teenagers. So no other adult literacy centres in New Zealand at that point were doing it, and I don't think many do now. We've gone through all sorts of stages. We tried working directly with schools, with their SENCOs, their student learning educational needs coordinators. But we found that they were trying to, basically they were just trying to get the students to pass exams and to fit into the NCEA, and we're student-centred, so we stopped doing that and we work instead with teenagers after school or at weekends, in the same way that we do with adults now. About 200 a year come through our program, 80 to 100 at any one time. And all of our work teaching is done with volunteers. So we have 3 people in the office, which used to be my garage, but I never got a car in it. It became the Riot office before that. But we do have kind of office space now. It doesn't look too bad. It's very grassroots, however. We have 2 part-time, an accounts part-time person living somewhere else, and someone in the Philippines who does some admin work for us. But the 3 of us who live in Port Waikato come to the office every day. We have around 200 volunteers.
Wow.
And right through the country. We've even had them overseas at times. So some of the things that the volunteers do, we've got a database team that creates lists of organisations which are likely to have someone with a literacy problem. A contact centre, which is both for incoming calls and outgoing calls. It's small, 4 or 5 people at a time, sometimes. We have teams of a team of regional ambassadors so that they can go to local network meetings and be a face in the community, so that we're not just an anonymous group somewhere far away. We have interviewers interviewing new volunteers and conducting referee checks, volunteer coaches themselves who are the core of our organisation. Student interviewers, we're fortunate to have ex-primary teachers or ex-literacy teachers who have actually got some experience, and they will interview the student and assess them. Basically, we work remotely. Very few of our students are, just a minute, I'm looking for you again. I went to a different document, I couldn't see you. Most of our students work with Zoom or by phone. Initially, it was only by phone to start with. It was a case of using mail for them to send their writing back to us. And one of the learning points in that was the first time I worked with a student remotely, I was on the phone to them, and they'd sent me their writing, but they hadn't kept a copy, so we couldn't talk about it. So after that, I needed them to make a second copy to send me. And what that did, just, one of those sort of accidental spin-offs, they edited it. So, when you're listening to someone read their writing back, often they'll say, oh, I knew that. Well, that gets, that stops happening when they write a second version for you. So, it was just...
This is amazing to me. And that leads to my next question, really, which is, and again, I had the great privilege of having a chat with you, and you changed my life then, but what drew you particularly to literacy as a life work?
Well, I walked a pretty crooked path to get there, really. A whole lot of separate things that I did all came together in the end. My 40-something son is dyslexic, and I tried to help him when he was young and couldn't really. I was too close. I was tired. I was a mum of 4. Then I trained as a facilitator in communication skills, teaching assertion and relationship skills, that kind of thing, stress management. And I applied to Manukau Polytech for a job that was advertised as teaching communication, thinking that's what they were wanting. I'm pretty sure no one else applied, because what they really wanted was an English teacher. And I got the job. So I went in completely cold, and it turned out that they'd got funding for a Pacific Island art and craft course. And because they had more hours in the art and craft course tutor could do, they'd decided these people need English and maths too, so we'll give them that. Well, the students were not happy about it. I was a little bit luckier than the maths teacher, because I was second in the day, closer to the art. And basically my job was meant to be teaching things like how to write an essay or how to write an assignment. And what I found was that these were second generation Pacifica kids. They were missing out verbs and pronouns. And that really puzzled me, because when they talked, they were fine. And I still don't understand why, if they could talk English that was grammatically correct, why they were writing differently. But I went searching, and Manukau Polytech has an amazing library. And so I found Frere for the Classroom in there. And I'm sure that some of you will relate to, know Frere and love him as much as I do.
Absolutely.
So I started using some of those things. I'd read a chapter and I'd be trying different things out with the students. And eventually the course got cancelled because the kids even stopped coming to the art part of the class. So the next year I went to university, and I did Māori language because I wanted to figure out. It really hooked me, wanting to know what was wrong with, what had gone wrong for them that they couldn't write those full sentences. And the structure of Māori language was that much different that I could understand a bit more why it had happened. Then a friend was teaching numeracy and weeping on the phone to me about the fact that she was out of her depth, and I was good at maths. So I said, "I'll come and help you." I was on a benefit. I just wanted to do it for interest. And she was so excited about the idea that she offered to pay me half of what she got cash, which is great when you're on the benefit, in order for me to help her. And we did a huge learning curve ourselves on teaching numeracy. And she was also teaching literacy. So I ended up as a helper in her literacy class, then I trained for it. And basically everything I'd done, the Manukau Polytech and Frere, and my son having had dyslexia and, facilitation skills, and even the numeracy, it all came together into teaching literacy.
It's fantastic. You are just how you've put your life together in this way is stunning to me. And I've only got a couple more questions for you. But the first one is, you are living in, a quite small rural environment. But what's the consequences of rurality when we're talking about literacy issues?
They can't get to help in an urban area, and it's not anonymous. If they do get help, it's, like we get students all the time saying things like, "Well, I don't want someone down the road or my friend's auntie to be helping me." So one of the good things about what we do is that we can have someone at the top of the North Island helping someone in the bottom of the South Island, because it's done through Zoom and Google Meet mainly these days. They have the same problems as urban people with a literacy problem. They've got the same shame, the same reluctance to admit that they've got a literacy problem. But it comes out in things like, if you want to measure drench for a cow or sheep, you've got to be able to read the instructions. You've got to be able to know maths. We had an example of milk tanker drivers. When they changed to computers, they had started having the computers working out the routes to make it more economical. And tankers were crashing because the tanker drivers who hadn't had literacy skills were totally confused by the computers, and they knew the old routes off by heart. They didn't have to have literacy skills of any kind in order to drive those tankers. I know of a meat worker who they changed the code on, they used to shove the meat down one line, then down another line, just depending on the grades. The grades were stamped on them and they were in different colors. Pardon me. And they changed the code, and they ended up with two codes that said something different in terms of what was written on them, but they were the same color. And someone who had worked in that industry for 50 years burst into tears and admitted, because he kept making mistakes all of a sudden, because he was just using the color. So those are the kind of things I know of that have happened in rural areas.
Jo, you're changing the planet today. That is remarkable, which leads to my final question. And how we mitigate and manage shame, how we enfold public good around our citizens so that all of us are on this learning journey and we cut the shame away. That's key. But I wonder about, my final question for you is the role of digitisation perhaps in bleeding away that shame. So how the digital interfaces like Zoom that we've used today, or Google Meet or Teams, how is that transforming literacy services, what you do?
Well, for us, we're dealing with remote people who couldn't get to a literacy centre, so it's giving connection. But I mean, it's in everything we do. I mean, as technology changes, once we used the phone and letters. Now we use video conference almost. Most of our students have a phone, so they can always get onto a video conference. But now with smartphones, it's got even better because they can take a photo of their writing. They don't have to, and the coach can see it instantly. They can share their screen and the coach can see it. The big issue for us is the money to have data. But we do have ways that we can get cheap data for our students. So that's the big issue, is still, whether a student has a device and whether they can access Wi-Fi or.
I think if we can find ways to support Jo doing the work she's doing to get data, get access to greater data, I think that's the least that we can do. Jo, can I just thank you for being you? I had the great privilege of having a wonderful conversation with you about a month, 6 weeks ago, and I was moved and transformed by you then. And my respect for you and your life and what you've done has only been intensified through today. So, colleagues, we finished with the wonderful Unison, Jo. Oh, you're both amazing. We finished with the wonderful Unison, Jo. We wanted women speaking of themselves and of their lives in a meaningful way, women who are changing the world using their experiences and transcending their experiences. So we will conclude today. I'm conscious that we're 15 minutes over, for which I apologise. But can I say, colleagues, thank you for sharing this morning with me. This has been a time to embody defiance and to claim the courage of the colleagues around us and to move forward with it. So on behalf of Graduate Women Manawatu, who have sponsored this event, to start off International Women's Day, I thank you for everything you are and everything you do, and may you continue to transcend and transform. Thank you, colleagues. Have a lovely rest of your day. Much love. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Big love to Palmerston North Library. Have a lovely afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.